My name is Ren Kisaragi, and 3 weeks ago I was the kind of guy who checked my bank balance before ordering extra cheese. I was 24, living in a studio apartment so small I could open the refrigerator from my bed, and working customer support for a company that sold smart air fryers to people who had somehow made cooking chicken nuggets a software problem. My salary covered rent, instant noodles, and exactly one bad decision per month. That month, the bad decision was supposed to be buying a new pair of shoes. Instead, the universe mailed me a black credit card. There was no bank logo, no card number on the front, no shiny eagle, no fancy metal crest, no name except mine engraved in silver. Ren Kisaragi. Under my name were 4 tiny words. $1. Any purchase? I thought it was a scam, obviously. Normal people do not receive supernatural finance rectangles in unmarked envelopes. That is how you become the opening victim in a horror movie about identity theft. There was also a note. It said, "The merchant receives full payment. You are charged $1. No purchase limit. No category restrictions. Tap responsibly. Tap responsibly." That was the suspicious part. No legitimate financial product has ever told a broke man to tap responsibly. I flipped the card over. There was no phone number, no website, and no customer service line. Just a magnetic stripe, a chip, and a tiny silver symbol that looked like the number 1 inside a circle. I should have cut it up. Instead, I put on sweatpants and walked downstairs to the coffee shop. Because if I was going to get my identity stolen, I at least wanted caffeine first. The cheapest thing on the menu was a small black coffee for $3.80. I ordered it, pulled out the weird card, and held it over the reader. Beep. Approved. My phone buzzed. I opened my banking app. $1 charge. I stared at the screen. The barista stared at me. Then I checked the receipt. $3.80 paid in full. I checked my app again. $1. I whispered, "No way." Then I bought a muffin for $6. $1. I bought a sandwich for $12. $1. I bought a $28 bag of imported coffee beans that tasted like burnt tree regret. $1. At that point, my financial planning had become a raccoon with Apple Pay and no adult supervision. I went back to my apartment and sat on the floor because I did not own a real chair. For the next hour, I stared at the card like it was going to grow teeth. Maybe there was a delayed charge. Maybe it showed $1 temporarily and the real amount would hit later. Maybe I would wake up tomorrow owing Visa $9 million and 1 kidney. So I waited. I refreshed my account every 30 seconds. Nothing changed. Every purchase remained exactly $1. Then I noticed something else. The transactions did not show the coffee shop's actual purchase amounts. My bank saw only 3 separate $1 charges. That meant the card was not giving me a discount. It was changing reality somewhere between the terminal and my account. I needed a bigger test. A test that would hurt if I was wrong, but not completely kill me. So I went to an electronics store. I walked past the phone cases and headed straight to the gaming laptops. There was one machine I had been staring at online for months. Huge graphics card, ridiculous processor, screen bright enough to signal aircraft. Price tag, $4,999. A salesman named Trevor appeared beside me with the expression of a man who had already decided I was not buying anything. I pointed at the laptop. "I'll take that one." My common sense was getting dragged behind the economy by its underwear, and somehow I was still holding the receipt. Trevor looked at my hoodie, my old sneakers, and my face. He asked if I wanted financing. I said no. I tapped the black card. Approved. Trevor's little handheld screen showed the full payment. My phone showed $1. My soul briefly left my body, did a backflip, and returned wearing sunglasses. I bought a second laptop, $1, then a giant television, $1, then a camera, headphones, a drone, a robot vacuum, a smart refrigerator, and a toothbrush that connected to Wi-Fi for reasons I still did not understand. Each purchase was $1. Trevor started following me around with the respectful fear normally reserved for oil princes and men who own too many snakes. I reached the register with a cart worth more than my annual salary. That was when I had another thought. What if I bought everything in one transaction? The cashier scanned 37 items, total $17,412.63. I tapped. Approved. My phone buzzed. $1. I almost dropped the refrigerator brochure. So the card did not charge $1 per item. It charged $1 per purchase. One checkout. $1. My brain began producing evil ideas so quickly I could practically hear Windows startup sounds. I walked back through the store and asked if they sold prepaid gift cards. They did. I tried buying a $500 general use prepaid card. Declined. For the first time, the black card did not work. The terminal displayed 2 words. Currency substitute. I tried store credit. Declined. I tried a money order at a grocery store. Declined. I tried adding cash back. Declined. Okay. So I could not directly turn the thing into cash. That was probably good because otherwise I would have spent the afternoon legally mugging the banking system with a rectangle. But physical goods, services, normal invoices, those seemed fair game. I spent the evening testing like a scientist who had been fired for poor ethics. Taxi ride, $1. Fancy dinner, $1. 1 year gym membership, $1. Hotel room, $1. A ridiculous massage chair, $1. A custom tailored suit, $1. A dentist appointment, $1. I even paid my overdue electricity bill through an online card portal. $1. That one hit differently. I stared at the confirmation page for a full minute. I had spent years getting kicked in the nuts by bills, and now electricity itself had apparently become a dollar menu item. The next morning I called in sick. Not because I was ill, because I had discovered a violation of modern economics and did not feel emotionally prepared to explain a broken air fryer to Kevin from Ohio. I needed rules. If I was going to use this thing without accidentally becoming the world's dumbest criminal, I had to understand it. Rule 1, the merchant always got full payment. Rule 2, I was charged exactly $1. Rule 3, cash and things acting directly like cash were blocked. Rule 4, the purchase had to be voluntary. I learned that after attempting to pay a parking ticket, the card declined and displayed penalty not purchase. Rule 5, there seemed to be no maximum amount. I did not know Rule 5 yet. I was about to learn it. There was a luxury watch store in the mall I had walked past 100 times. It had security guards, soft carpets, and lighting designed to make rich people look even richer. I went in wearing my new suit. A salesperson named Elena asked what I was looking for. I pointed at a Rolex in a glass case. The price was $42,000. My pulse doubled. The laptop test had been $5,000. This was 8 times bigger. If the black card suddenly decided to stop being magical, I would not just be broke. I would be broke while wearing a watch that reminded me exactly how long I had been broke. At that point, my relationship with money had the same dignity as a porta potty after a music festival. I asked to buy it. Elena gave me a careful look. Then she brought out the watch. I tapped. Approved. $1. My hand actually shook. Elena congratulated me. I stared at the watch. That was the moment my fear finally lost its job. I walked directly across the mall to a designer store and bought a coat that cost $11,000. $1. Then shoes for $3,000. $1. Then sunglasses for $2,000. $1. By lunchtime, I looked like a rapper who had just discovered compound interest. I caught my reflection in a window and realized I had gone from man waiting for bus to man whose assistant waits for bus on his behalf. That should have been enough. It was not enough, because across the street from the mall was a Lamborghini dealership. I had never been inside a supercar showroom. I always assumed there was some invisible force field that rejected anyone whose credit score had been insulted by a furniture store. But I walked in. A yellow Lamborghini Revuelto sat under white lights like a mechanical dragon. A salesman approached me. His name was Victor. His suit probably had its own financial advisor. He asked if I wanted to look around. I asked the price of the yellow car. He said $680,000 with options. I nodded like that number did not make my ancestors nervous. Can I pay by card? I asked. Victor smiled politely and said they usually preferred wire transfers for amounts that large, but card payment was technically possible if authorized, with an additional processing fee. That phrase hit me like divine music. Technically possible. I told him to run it. Victor's smile disappeared. He asked if I was serious. I said yes. He brought over a manager. The manager brought over another manager. Then a woman from accounting appeared carrying a terminal like she was delivering a nuclear launch device. Total purchase price after taxes, fees, extended service, and a truly criminal amount of carbon fiber. $738,211. My old bank account balance was $914. I tapped the black card. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. Those 2 seconds were the longest period of my life. I started mentally planning an escape route through the bathroom. Then the terminal beeped. Approved. Victor's screen showed paid in full. My phone buzzed. $1. I had just bought a Lamborghini for the price of a convenience store banana. My legs almost stopped working. Victor asked if I wanted the keys. I said yes in a voice so calm I deserved an acting award. Then he asked about insurance. I froze, because owning a Lamborghini was one thing. Insuring a Lamborghini as a 24-year-old man with a driving history that included reversing into a mailbox was another. The quote was absurd, $38,000 per year. I asked if I could pay the annual premium by card. They said yes, $1. At that point, insurance had eaten my ass for years, and I had finally found the seasoning packet. I drove the car out of the dealership at 17 miles per hour because I was terrified of scratching my $1 Lamborghini. For the first 10 minutes, I followed every traffic law with the spiritual intensity of a monk. Then a guy in a modified sports car pulled beside me at a red light and revved his engine. I looked over, he looked at me. I looked at the Lamborghini logo on my steering wheel. Then I remembered I had paid $1 for this thing. I smiled. When the light turned green, I accelerated just enough to let the engine scream, then immediately slowed down because I saw a police car. I was rich, not stupid. Actually, I was not rich. The card had taken my budget, bent it over a spreadsheet, and made accounting watch. That was the strange part. My bank balance was still under $900. I owned a Lamborghini, a Rolex, and more electronics than a small Best Buy. But I was technically still poor. I had become asset rich and ramen liquid, so I needed to solve my next problem: parking. My apartment building did not have secure parking. I was not leaving a bright yellow supercar on the street next to a dumpster labeled "Do Not Feed Pigeons." I searched online for a monthly garage. The luxury tower 3 blocks away offered private climate-controlled spaces for $1,400 per month. I paid the entire year by card. $1. Problem solved. Then I looked at the luxury tower. It had a rooftop pool, a gym, a concierge, a private movie theater. My apartment had a radiator that sounded like someone fighting a robot in a metal trash can. So I opened the tower's website. The penthouse was available for rent, $29,000 per month. The leasing office accepted card payments for the deposit and first year if approved. I filled out the application. That was when reality slapped me. They asked for proof of income. My salary was embarrassingly normal. I could pay the rent, technically, but I could not prove I could pay the rent without explaining that I owned Satan's favorite debit card. So I did something smarter. I asked if the penthouse was also for sale. It was. Price, $6.8 million. I asked the real estate agent if a card payment was possible. He laughed. Then I told him I was serious. He said no one buys real estate by credit card because transaction limits and fees make it ridiculous. I asked whether it was legally impossible or just ridiculous. That question changed his expression. He made some calls. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a conference room with an agent, an escrow officer, a lawyer, and a portable payment terminal. They had structured the closing through a title company that could accept a card-funded purchase after enhanced verification, mostly because everyone involved wanted to see if I was insane. The final amount was $6,940,000, including fees and prepaid costs. The escrow officer asked if I was sure. I said yes. I tapped. Approved. $1. Nobody spoke. I think the terminal itself needed therapy. The escrow officer checked her system. The funds had settled. The seller was paid. The title transferred. My bank account decreased by $1. I now owned a penthouse. I left the conference room holding a folder of documents and experienced a very specific kind of panic. The kind where you realize your couch is worth less than the toilet in your new guest bathroom. So I hired an interior design company. They gave me 3 package options. I chose the most expensive one because the black card had destroyed my ability to understand adjectives like premium, furniture, art, installation, electronics, custom lighting, automated curtains, imported stone dining table, designer bed, home theater, and a refrigerator large enough to hide 3 accountants. Total, $487,000. $1. The designer asked whether I wanted a sculpture in the entryway. I asked what kind. She showed me a polished steel object that looked like a giant bent spoon. Price, $63,000. I bought it, not because I liked it, because I wanted guests to wonder whether it was important. That is apparently 90% of luxury decorating. By the end of the week, my life was unrecognizable. I resigned from my job. I did it politely. I did not tell my manager that I could now buy the company's entire office furniture inventory for $1 and still have change emotionally. Then I hired an accountant named Omar. Omar was 40, calm, and had the permanent expression of a man who had survived 3 tax seasons and no longer feared death. I was financially raw-dogging reality with less cash than a decent refrigerator and the confidence of a raccoon in a strip club. I paid his annual retainer by card, $1. I also hired a lawyer named Mina Cho who specialized in high-net-worth clients. Her retainer was $50,000, $1. I did not explain the card immediately. I simply showed them the records. Omar looked at my bank statements, then the receipts, then the title documents for the penthouse. Then he removed his glasses and stared at the wall. Mina asked whether the funds were legitimate. I said the merchants had been paid, the transactions were approved, and the card issuer apparently did not exist. She told me that sentence was a legal migraine. For 2 days, they investigated everything they could. No chargebacks, no stolen accounts, no unpaid merchant balances. Every merchant had received full settlement through normal networks. The card itself seemed impossible to trace beyond a private processing entity called One Financial Clearing. Omar searched corporate records. Nothing useful. Mina searched regulatory databases. Nothing useful. The company appeared to exist only when a transaction needed to be paid. Then it vanished like my motivation during mandatory workplace training. Mina asked me the obvious question. What are you planning to buy? I looked out my penthouse window at the city. I should have said nothing. I should have said I would be careful. Instead, I said, I want to find the limit. That was how my life became completely stupid. Omar did not approve of my plan. Mina approved even less, which was exactly why I kept both of them around. If I had surrounded myself with people who said yes to everything, I would have purchased a volcano by Tuesday. Omar built a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet had categories like verified transactions, asset maintenance, tax exposure, and things Ren absolutely should not buy just because he can. That last category was highlighted in red. It contained 43 items after one afternoon. I had contributed 39. The first serious question was whether the card could handle purchases above $10 million. The second question was what object could possibly justify testing that without creating a nightmare. Then I saw a yacht video. It appeared while I was watching a review of my Lamborghini, because the internet had already decided I was emotionally vulnerable to expensive machinery. The video showed a white Megayacht cutting through blue water. It had a helipad, glass elevators, an infinity pool, 2 hot tubs, a cinema, a gym, a sauna, and a garage inside the yacht for smaller boats. A boat with a garage for other boats. That is the exact moment civilization went too far and I decided to participate. I sent the listing to Mina. She replied with one word, no. I sent it to Omar. He called me immediately. I declined the call. Then I contacted the broker. The yacht was called Serafina. It was 105 meters long and listed for $185 million. I asked the broker, a British man named Nigel, whether they accepted cards. There was silence on the phone. Not ordinary silence. Rich person silence. The kind where somebody is trying to decide whether you are joking or just American. Nigel explained that yachts were normally purchased through wire transfers, escrow, and corporate structures. I asked whether a card could be used if the seller agreed. He said theoretically, but no payment processor would approve a transaction that large. I said mine would. That got me a meeting. 2 days later, I flew to Monaco commercially because I had not yet made the mistake you think I was about to make. I bought a first-class ticket at the airport. $1. Then I bought the empty seat beside me because I did not want anyone watching me eat 6 tiny first-class desserts. $1. The flight attendant asked whether I was traveling for business. Somewhere my old credit score was probably screaming into a pillow and calling me a cheating bastard. I said I was going to test a credit card on a Megayacht. She smiled the way people smile at a man who might be either extremely wealthy or actively hallucinating. When I arrived, Nigel met me at the marina. He had gray hair, perfect posture, and shoes that looked more educated than me. The Serafina was enormous. From the dock, it did not look like a boat. It looked like a luxury apartment building that had escaped into the ocean. We boarded through a rear platform big enough to host a wedding. The main salon had marble floors. The walls were polished wood. The ceiling had a light sculpture made of hundreds of hand-blown glass pieces. There was a piano that played itself. I asked how much the piano cost. Nigel said about $400,000. I nodded. At that point, my sense of money had been thrown into a dumpster behind a casino. We toured 6 decks. There were 12 guest suites, a private owner's deck, a massage room, a beauty salon, a wine cellar, and an underwater viewing lounge. The engine room was cleaner than my old apartment. The yacht carried jet skis, diving gear, sea scooters, and a submarine for 3 people. A submarine? Inside the yacht. I stood beside it for 10 seconds thinking about every schoolteacher who had told me to make responsible choices. Then Nigel showed me the helipad. There was no helicopter included. I said that seemed rude. Nigel laughed politely. I was not joking. We sat in the main lounge with the seller's representative, a payment specialist, Mina, Omar, and 2 lawyers who had been added because apparently my purchasing behavior caused lawyers to reproduce. The seller had agreed to a card transaction if funds could be fully verified before title transfer. The processor had built a special one-time terminal request. The final price after taxes, registration arrangements, broker fees, equipment inventory, and enough paperwork to kill a rainforest was $192,400,000. Omar leaned toward me. He whispered that this was insane. I whispered back that we had flown all this way. He said that was not a financial argument. He was correct. I tapped the card. The terminal displayed processing. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. The room stopped breathing. Then the screen changed. Approved. My phone buzzed. $1. Nigel checked the settlement system. His eyebrows rose. The seller had received the full amount. $192,400,000 had moved somewhere. My account had lost the same amount I once paid for a gas station hot dog. I was now the owner of a Megayacht. I looked around the lounge. Nobody knew what to say. So I asked if the minibar was included. Nigel said yes. That was when Omar put his face in his hands. This card had just violated capitalism so hard the invisible hand of the market probably needed a cigarette and an ice pack. Ownership transferred by the end of the day. The crew lined up to greet me. Captain Adrian Bell was a serious man with 20 years of experience and the exhausted eyes of someone who had already heard about his new owner. He asked whether I wanted to rename the yacht. I absolutely did. I renamed it $1 more. Mina objected. She said it was basically advertising that something weird was happening, so I changed it to impulse purchase. She said that was somehow worse. I kept it. Then I learned the first rule of owning giant things. Buying them is not the same as operating them. The yacht costs millions per year in crew salaries, maintenance, fuel, marina fees, insurance, provisioning, inspections, and repairs. Normal billionaires accepted that. I had a better plan. Could I pay all those costs by card? Crew payroll itself did not process like a retail card payment. But Captain Bell worked through a yacht management company. This was the kind of shit that could make an accountant open an incognito window for Excel. The management company could invoice annual crew services as a package. I paid the year in advance. $1. Insurance premium for the year. $1. Marina contract. $1. Maintenance package. $1. Fuel account deposit was rejected because it functioned too much like stored value. So instead I ordered an actual delivery of 400,000 liters of marine diesel. $1. Captain Bell stared at the receipt. Then he looked at me. I could see the exact moment he decided not to ask questions as long as his salary kept arriving. I also bought enough food to provision the yacht for 6 months. The chef asked what I liked to eat. I said spicy noodles. He thought I was joking. The next evening, a French-trained private chef served me a bowl of noodles with lobster, truffle, and gold leaf. It probably cost $300. I ate it in sweatpants while watching cartoons in a cinema with $20,000 of acoustic panels. That was the first moment I truly understood wealth. Wealth is not wearing a tuxedo on a yacht. Wealth is eating noodles like a divorced goblin while the yacht has its own zip code. The next problem appeared when I decided to take the yacht out. Captain Bell informed me that the helicopter pad was certified, but using it would require a helicopter and trained pilot. I remembered Nigel's offensive omission, so I searched for helicopters. Mina saw my browser tabs and asked whether we could have one normal day. I told her this was normal now. I bought an Airbus ACH 160 through a luxury aviation broker. Price after customization, $22 million. $1. I added annual maintenance. $1. Pilot services. $1. Insurance. $1. Then I discovered the interior could be customized. I selected cream leather, a minibar, soundproofing, and a tiny espresso machine. Omar asked why a helicopter needed an espresso machine. I told him tired rich people still needed caffeine. He said I was not rich. He was technically correct, which was becoming increasingly annoying. My bank account had fallen to $876. I owned around $250 million in assets. I could not withdraw enough cash to buy a used motorcycle. My finances were the accounting equivalent of showing up naked except for a crown. That created an unexpected problem. Tips. Restaurants could process tips on the card, so those were fine. Valets could sometimes take card payments, also fine. But random cash tips were impossible to magically reduce. I needed actual spending money. I could sell assets I had bought, but Mina warned me that constantly buying things for $1 and selling them for millions would attract every investigator on Earth. I did not need that. So I decided to do the boring thing. I bought something that produced legitimate income, not stocks. The card rejected direct purchases of publicly traded securities as financial instrument. But private businesses were different. A business was property. A company could be sold by contract, and contracts could apparently be paid by card if the seller's processor allowed it. I needed a small company to test. Something profitable. Something simple. Something I would not ruin by being an idiot. I found a neighborhood laundromat listed for sale at $600,000. The owner, Mr. Patel, had run it for 30 years and wanted to retire. I met him in person. He asked why a young man in a ridiculous watch wanted a laundromat. I told him I liked recurring revenue. Omar had taught me that phrase 5 minutes earlier. Mr. Patel nodded with respect. I felt like I had passed an adult exam by cheating. We structured the asset purchase through his business broker. The broker could accept a card payment. I tapped. My sense of reasonable spending had been kicked down the stairs, robbed, and then invoiced for parking. $1. Mr. Patel received $600,000. I received a laundromat. And for the first time, I owned something that put real cash into a bank account. The laundromat generated around $15,000 in monthly profit. Not yacht money, but normal money. Money I could use without touching the black card. I decided I loved laundromats. The next morning, I bought 11 more. $1 each. Then a self-storage facility. $1. Then 3 parking garages. $1 each. Then a car wash. $1. Within 2 weeks, I had legitimate monthly income in the hundreds of thousands. Omar finally smiled. He said this was the first responsible thing I had done, so naturally I celebrated by buying a dinosaur skeleton. It happened at an auction in Paris. I was invited because yacht brokers talk, and apparently the phrase young buyer who paid for a mega yacht by card travels through wealthy circles faster than gossip in a group chat. The auction house was selling art, rare watches, vintage cars, meteorites, fossils, and objects rich people buy when paintings no longer make their friends jealous. I went because Mina said meeting established collectors might help normalize my profile. That plan lasted 12 minutes. The dinosaur was a nearly complete Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton, 38 feet long. Starting estimate $12 million. I wanted it immediately. Omar reminded me that I did not have anywhere to put it. I said the penthouse lobby was tall. He said the building association would murder me. I reminded him I owned the penthouse, not the building. He said exactly. Bidding started. 10 million. 12. 14. A man across the room raised his paddle. He was young, blonde, wearing a white dinner jacket, and smiling like his teeth had a sponsorship deal. That was my first encounter with Cassian Voss. I knew the name. Everyone did. Cassian was a billionaire heir, social media celebrity, racing team owner, luxury brand investor, and professional human peacock. He had 40 million followers and a habit of posting videos titled things like, "I bought the only blue diamond motorcycle in Europe because Monday was boring." Apparently, he wanted my dinosaur. I bid 16 million. He bid 18. I bid 20. He glanced over at me. Then he smiled. 25 million. I raised my paddle. 30. The room murmured. Cassian turned in his seat. 35. I bid 40. Omar leaned close and asked what the hell I was doing. I said testing the auction terminal. He said I had already tested the card on a yacht. I told him science demands replication. Cassian bid 50 million. At that point, everyone was watching us. I lifted my paddle. 75 million. The auctioneer actually paused. Cassian's smile tightened. He bid 80. I bid 100 million. For a dinosaur. A dead dinosaur. A dead dinosaur that had been free for 66 million years. My ancestors were probably watching from heaven, wondering why evolution had bothered. Cassian did not bid again. The hammer fell. Sold. $100 million. The auction house arranged payment in a private room. I tapped the black card. Approved. $1. The auction director confirmed full payment. I signed the paperwork. Then I walked back into the reception carrying a champagne glass and owning a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Cassian approached me. He asked what investment fund I represented. I told him none. He asked whether my family was in oil, shipping, technology, or real estate. I said my mother taught middle school mathematics and my father repaired elevators. He thought I was making fun of him. I was not. That seemed to bother him more. Then he asked where I planned to display the dinosaur. I realized I still did not know. So I said, I'll figure it out. Cassian stared at me for a second, then laughed. Not a friendly laugh. Not an angry laugh either. It was the laugh of a man who had just discovered a new game. If fiscal responsibility had a face, it would have spit in my mouth and filed a restraining order. I should have been worried. Instead, I was wondering whether a museum accepted credit cards. The museum did accept credit cards. Unfortunately, museums do not normally let private citizens park a dinosaur in the lobby because they ran out of floor space at home. I called 3. The first said no. The second said they could consider a temporary loan after months of paperwork. The third asked whether I wanted to donate the skeleton. I hung up so fast I nearly injured my thumb. I had paid $1 whole for that dinosaur. I was not made of money. Then my real estate broker called with a solution. There was an old luxury shopping mall outside the city that had closed after a developer went bankrupt. It had marble floors, enormous atriums, underground parking, rooftop terraces, a movie theater, and enough empty retail space to store several bad ideas at once. Price $94 million. I toured it that afternoon. The main atrium had a 4-story glass ceiling. I stood in the center, looked up, and imagined a Tyrannosaurus Rex beneath it. Perfect. Mina asked what I intended to do with the remaining 800,000 square feet. I told her I would think of something. She rubbed her temples. That gesture was becoming part of her salary package. The seller had a payment portal because the property was held through a commercial development company. We signed the purchase contract. I tapped the black card. $1. The next week, my dinosaur stood in the center of my new mall. I named him Kevin. No reason. Kevin just looked like a Kevin. Then the empty mall started bothering me. A giant building with one dinosaur felt less like wealth and more like the world's most expensive school science project. So I began filling it. I bought a collection of classic arcade machines. $1. A full-size Formula One simulator. $1. A bowling alley installation. $1. A private indoor go-kart track. $1. A sushi conveyor system that wrapped around the food court. $1. A basketball court with motorized seats. $1. Then I found a company that built indoor surfing pools. Omar asked why a mall needed an indoor wave pool. I asked why he hated progress. $1. I called the building Dollar Plaza, which Mina hated because, again, she said I was practically confessing to being weird. So we registered the official name as Kisaragi Center. Everyone still called it Dollar Plaza. My friends from before all of this eventually found out I was rich looking. I had not told them about the card. There were 3 people I trusted enough to invite over. My childhood friend Juno, my old coworker Malik, and my cousin Emmy. I told them I had made money through private investments. That explanation lasted until Juno saw Kevin. She stared up at the dinosaur. Then she stared at me. Then she asked exactly what kind of private investment ends with a T. Rex standing beside a bubble tea kiosk. I said diversified assets. Malik discovered the go-kart track and stopped caring. Emmy walked into a former jewelry store that I had converted into a room containing nothing but massage chairs. She sat down and announced that whatever crime I was committing, she supported it. I told them the truth. Not every detail. Just enough. I showed them the black card. I bought 4 pizzas through an app. Total $112. My account charge $1. Then I ordered a $20,000 commercial slushy machine for the food court. $1. Juno stopped laughing. Malik asked whether I could buy a country. Mina, who was standing nearby, shouted no before I could answer. I had never seen a lawyer move that fast. I promised not to buy a country. At least not accidentally. I had reached the financial stage where price tags were basically decorative nipples on capitalism. Juno asked the smarter question. Where did the merchant's money come from? I still had no answer. Every seller got paid. The money never came from my account. It never appeared as debt. No statement showed a balance beyond the $1 charges. My credit report did not even list the account. One financial clearing was invisible. The card was basically a financial ghost with tap to pay. Malik asked if it worked on online purchases without entering a card number. It did. Whenever I selected the black card through my phone wallet, the payment processed normally. Emmy asked if I could buy something from an auction site. I said probably. She immediately found a listing for a 7-foot fiberglass statue of a muscular duck wearing a cowboy hat. Price $8,000. I told her absolutely not. She said I had bought a dinosaur for $100 million. That was unfair logic. I bought the duck. $1. We placed it outside my office in Dollar Plaza. By midnight, we had also bought a cotton candy machine, a vintage jukebox, a full medieval suit of armor, 12 beanbag chairs, a Japanese toilet with more controls than my Lamborghini, and a life-size animatronic gorilla from a closed theme park. My card statement looked like a toddler had inherited the Roman Empire. That night was fun. Then Cassian Voss posted a video. He was standing beside a red Ferrari with my yacht visible in the background at the marina. He never said my name. He did not need to. He joked about mystery money and people who arrived from nowhere buying trophies they did not understand. The internet loved it. Within hours, clips of the dinosaur auction were everywhere. People were trying to identify me. Someone found the Lamborghini dealership. Someone else found the yacht registration. Then photos appeared of me entering Dollar Plaza. The story became simple. Unknown 24-year-old suddenly buys yacht, supercar, penthouse, mall, and $100 million dinosaur. That is not a normal headline. That is the financial equivalent of seeing a possum driving a school bus. Mina told me we needed a public explanation. I refused to lie about inheriting money. Omar refused to let me explain the card, so we created Kisaragi Ventures. It was a private holding company for my legitimate businesses and assets. Technically accurate. Extremely vague. Perfect. We released one statement saying my purchases were privately financed and all transactions were lawful and fully settled. That made everyone even more curious. Cassian followed me online. Then he messaged me an invitation. He was hosting a charity auction and supercar exhibition at a hotel in Dubai. He wrote, "Bring the yellow Lamborghini." Mina said it was bait. I agreed. Then I booked a flight. She asked why. Because if someone puts bait in front of me and labels it clearly, apparently I become spiritually obligated to eat the hook. This time, I did not fly commercial. I decided a man with a Megayacht and helicopter should probably stop waiting in airport security while carrying a belt, a watch, and emotional damage. I contacted a private aviation company to charter a jet. A Gulfstream G700 was available. The round trip cost $180,000. $1. The flight was ridiculous. There was a bedroom, a shower, a dining table, a television larger than the one I used to own. The cabin crew served steak at 45,000 feet while I played a handheld game under a blanket. Halfway to Dubai, I realized chartering was stupid, not because it was expensive, because I would have to book again next time. I opened an aircraft marketplace on my tablet. Mina saw the screen from across the cabin. She said, "Ren." I said, "I'm only looking." 20 minutes later, I bought a Gulfstream. Not the one we were on, a different one. New, customized, pearl gray exterior, private bedroom, conference area, and enough range to cross oceans. My bank balance looked broke, my property list looked drunk, and my decision-making looked like it had been conceived behind a nightclub dumpster. Price $81 million. The broker emailed a secure payment link. $1. Mina stared at me. I told her technically I had saved money on future charters. She asked whether I understood that normal people did not save $180,000 by spending $81 million. I showed her the $1 charge. She stopped talking. The card had made accounting feel like black magic performed by a shitposting wizard. Dubai was exactly the wrong environment for my self-control. Everything looked expensive on purpose. The hotel had a lobby fountain bigger than my old apartment building. The valet area looked like a supercar mating ritual. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, Bugattis, Rolls-Royces. Cassian's event occupied an entire ballroom. He greeted me as if we were old friends. Cameras were everywhere. He introduced me to investors, athletes, celebrities, and people whose job descriptions seemed to be owns things. I kept my answers vague. Then he showed me the auction lineup, rare watches, jewelry, cars, art, a prototype electric hypercar, a 24-karat gold chess set, a bottle of perfume in a diamond-covered container that cost more than a hospital wing. I was doing fine until Cassian pointed at the final lot, a one-of-one Bugatti built for a collector who had backed out. The car was deep blue with exposed carbon fiber and silver trim. Starting price, $19 million. Cassian smiled. He said he was planning to buy it. I understood the game. He wanted another bidding war. He wanted to see where my money stopped. The problem was that my money stopped at $800-something. My card did not. The auction began. I behaved. I bought nothing. Cassian bought a watch for $3 million and glanced at me. I smiled. He bought the gold chess set. I smiled. He bought a painting that looked like someone had sneezed into a box of crayons. I smiled. Then the Bugatti came up. Cassian bid $20 million immediately. Someone else bid $21. Cassian went to $25. I lifted my paddle. $30 million. The ballroom woke up. Cassian looked delighted. $35. I went to $40. He went $45. I went $50. The other bidders gave up. Cassian went $60. I went $75. He laughed and bid $90. At that point, the car was worth maybe a quarter of the bidding price. Nobody cared. This was not an auction anymore. It was two idiots sword fighting with numbers. Cassian bid $100 million. I raised my paddle. $200 million. The room erupted. Even the auctioneer looked offended by mathematics. Cassian stopped smiling. He looked at me for a long time. Then he slowly raised his paddle. $210 million. I almost bid $300. Then I had a better idea. I lowered my paddle. The hammer fell. Sold to Cassian for $210 million. His victory smile returned. I applauded. He had just paid 10 times the car's likely value because I had annoyed him. That was funnier than winning. During the reception, he came over and thanked me for making it interesting. I congratulated him on the car. Then I asked if he knew the hotel was for sale. He stopped. I had learned that morning that the entire luxury property was owned by a private hospitality fund currently looking for a buyer. I had no intention of buying it when I first heard. Then Cassian made me sit through a $200 million peacock contest. Now I was inspired. I met the fund representatives upstairs. The hotel, attached residences, restaurants, conference center, and management rights were valued at $1.4 billion. The owners did not accept retail card payments. Of course they did not. But their acquisition council had a corporate payment system capable of receiving card-funded escrow deposits and settlement transactions through a commercial merchant facility. Mina spent 6 hours structuring the deal. I spent those 6 hours eating room service fries and watching Cassian's auction clips go viral. The whole situation had the clean moral geometry of a raccoon stealing condoms from a pharmacy at 3 in the morning. Just after midnight, the purchase documents were ready. Total transaction value, $1,430,000,000. The largest purchase I had ever attempted. My hands finally started sweating again. The yacht had been under $200 million. The hotel was more than 7 times that. There had to be a limit somewhere. The payment terminal sat on a conference table. 10 lawyers watched. 3 accountants watched. 2 bankers watched remotely. Mina watched me like she was prepared to strangle me with the charging cable. I tapped the black card. The screen went blank. My stomach dropped. Then a silver number appeared. 1. For the first time, the terminal displayed the same symbol printed on the back of my card. The number stayed there for 3 seconds. Then the terminal flashed. Approved. My phone buzzed. $1. The $1.4 billion settlement cleared. I had just purchased the hotel. At breakfast, Cassian walked into the restaurant wearing sunglasses indoors. The general manager came to my table and asked whether I approved the new owner's welcome reception for that evening. Cassian slowly removed his sunglasses. I buttered my toast. He asked what the manager meant by new owner. I told him I bought the hotel. He stared at me. I stared back. Then I asked whether he enjoyed his stay. The look on his face was worth at least $2. Cassian thought I was joking. That was understandable. Most people do not buy the building around someone during breakfast. The general manager handed me a leather folder containing ownership documents, operational reports, and a schedule for the welcome reception. Cassian leaned over to read the first page. His face changed. The hotel really belonged to my holding company. He asked when I had bought it. I told him sometime between midnight and the fries. He asked why. I looked around the restaurant. The view was great, the orange juice was excellent, and the pillows upstairs had been surprisingly firm. So I said, "Good breakfast." He laughed so hard he nearly dropped his coffee. That was the moment I realized Cassian was not actually angry. Competitive, yes. Annoying, absolutely. But not evil. He was simply a man who had spent his whole life being the craziest rich person in every room, and I had appeared out of nowhere wearing the financial equivalent of cheat codes. He loved it, which was dangerous, because Cassian had ideas. His first idea was a spending challenge. We had to walk through a luxury shopping district for 1 hour and buy the most ridiculous legal object we could find. No cars, no watches, no jewelry. The loser had to wear a chicken costume to his next public event. I agreed before Mina could physically stop me. Cassian immediately bought a 12-foot hand-carved marble fountain shaped like 3 lions fighting an octopus. Price, $400,000. I found a store selling custom grand pianos and ordered one made with transparent acrylic, gold-plated hardware, and keys inlaid with mother of pearl. Price, $800,000. $1. Cassian bought a dining table made from a single ancient tree trunk for $1.2 million. I found a luxury sleep company and purchased a custom mattress containing horsehair, silk, cashmere, and enough nonsense to make insomnia feel prestigious. Price, $500,000. Cassian laughed because my mattress cost less than his table. Then I asked the mattress company if they sold the building. They did not, so I lost that round spiritually. We kept going. He bought a giant crystal chandelier from an Italian showroom. I bought an entire commercial aquarium installation from a marine design company, not a fish tank. An aquarium wall 30 meters long with artificial reef structures, filtration equipment, temperature controls, and an optional acrylic tunnel. Total, $6.3 million. $1. Cassian said that counted as construction equipment, not an object. I was not beating the system anymore. I was pantsing it in public and asking why everyone looked uncomfortable. I said the octopus fountain had 3 lions and therefore violated natural law, so he had no standing. We needed a judge. A crowd had formed by then because people recognized Cassian. We let a 12-year-old tourist decide. He chose the aquarium because, in his words, sharks are cooler. Democracy worked. Cassian accepted defeat. Then he asked how I paid for everything. That question was becoming a mosquito in my ear. I told him I used a private credit facility. Technically true? He asked what bank. I said private. Also technically true. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said he would figure it out. I told him good luck. I should have known a billionaire with too much free time would take that as a personal quest. Back at my new hotel, I discovered another problem with owning businesses. People expected me to make decisions. The general manager wanted approval for renovations. The food director wanted a new restaurant concept. The spa wanted imported equipment. The events team wanted a ballroom redesign. I knew nothing about hotels. My complete hospitality experience was stealing tiny shampoo bottles and lying about minibar peanuts. So I did the smart thing. I told the existing management team to keep running everything exactly as before and gave them a larger improvement budget. Then I paid every approved vendor invoice by card, $1. The hotel got upgraded rooms, new kitchen equipment, a redesigned pool deck, better staff facilities, and an entire building management system. Every merchant got paid in full. My cost was roughly $23 because the invoices came from 23 vendors. That taught me a new trick. I did not need to understand a business if I hired people who did. I just needed to remove stupid budget constraints. Omar called this recklessly efficient capital allocation. I called it clicking yes on expensive emails. My next acquisition happened by accident. The hotel's main restaurant had a problem with its specialty olive oil supplier. The supplier had raised prices after a poor harvest, and the chef was furious because he said no other oil had the same flavor. I asked how much the oil company wanted for a guaranteed 5-year supply. The chef said they would not offer one. I asked whether the company itself was for sale. Everyone at the table stared at me. This had become my favorite question. It turned out the producer was family-owned and not for sale. Good. I was trying to become less stupid. Then the owner jokingly said he might sell for 50 million euros. I asked if he meant it. 3 days later, I owned an olive oil company. $1. Mina called me from the airport and said I needed to stop interpreting jokes as acquisition proposals. I said the hotel now had stable olive oil supply. She said I had spent 50 million euros to solve a restaurant ingredient problem. I corrected her. I had spent $1. She made a noise I had only previously heard from a printer jam. The company itself was profitable, which made Omar happy. I left the family running it, increased worker bonuses, upgraded equipment, and bought a fleet of new delivery vehicles. Each vendor transaction cost me $1. The employees thought I was a generous new owner. I was. But I was also essentially using a cosmic coupon code that had escaped from God's spam folder. When I returned home, my public profile had exploded. People now called me the mystery billionaire. Business magazines estimated my net worth anywhere from $1 billion to $12 billion. They were all wrong. My actual checking account balance was $843. Omar had moved profits from the laundromats, storage facilities, parking garages, olive company, and hotel operations into proper accounts. So Kisaragi Ventures had several $1 million of real cash. Somewhere, an economics professor was getting a mysterious nosebleed and did not know I was the reason. But my personal account still looked like a college student who had discovered recurring subscriptions. The black card continued charging $1 at a time. I began carrying a normal debit card as camouflage. Buying a $3 bottle of water for $1 was technically suspicious when you did it in front of people, so for cheap purchases, I paid normal price. That was how ridiculous my life had become. I used a regular card for coffee to avoid attention, then used the supernatural card to buy a $70 million airplane. A financial planner would have shit himself so violently he could qualify for rocket propulsion. My new Gulfstream arrived 2 weeks later. I named it Budget Airline. Mina refused to board until I removed the name from the exterior. I compromised by keeping it inside the cabin on a small plaque. Then Cassian invited me to a private racetrack. I knew this was another trap. I went anyway. He had gathered 6 hypercars, professional instructors, camera crews, and 20 wealthy friends who all looked genetically incapable of standing in a normal airport line. The event was supposed to be a friendly track day. Cassian's Bugatti from the auction sat near the pit lane. $210 million of spite. He had actually paid for it. I respected that. He asked what I brought. I had my Lamborghini. He laughed. Then a truck arrived behind me carrying a McLaren Solus GT I had purchased that morning. Price $4 million. $1. Cassian stopped laughing. I had never driven a track-only hypercar. This became obvious 20 seconds after I entered the first corner too slowly, panicked, accelerated too aggressively, and spun into the runoff area. I did not crash. but I did rotate approximately 180 degrees while making a sound no adult man should produce. The instructor calmly asked if I wanted to try again. I said yes. For the rest of the morning, he taught me properly. Braking points, throttle control, corner entry, vision. By lunch, I was still slower than Cassian, but I was no longer a mobile insurance claim. Cassian beat my lap time by 11 seconds and celebrated like he had won a world championship. I congratulated him. Then I asked who owned the racetrack. He immediately stopped celebrating. The track was owned by a private motorsport company. Cassian told me I could not buy it. I asked why. He said because he was already trying. That made it interesting. The owner was an older former racing driver named Arturo Vega. He had no desire to sell to either of us because, as he put it, we both had the energy of spoiled raccoons. I liked him instantly. Instead of asking for a price, I asked what the track needed. Arturo complained about 3 things: an outdated medical center, noise complaints from nearby development, and an unfinished second circuit he had wanted to build for years. I offered to pay for all 3 without buying the track. He laughed. I showed him contracts with 3 engineering firms. Medical center upgrade, $12 million. Sound barrier and landscaping project, $18 million. Second circuit and paddock expansion, $140 million. 3 transactions, $3. Arturo stared at me like I had dropped from the sky. Cassian asked what I got out of it. I said lifetime track access. Arturo agreed immediately. Cassian called that cheating. I told him buying everything was getting predictable. For once, I wanted to buy a solution instead. That became another rule for me. The card could purchase things. But the funniest use was sometimes purchasing the removal of a problem. Traffic annoying? Hire a helicopter. Hotel restaurant lacks oil? Buy the supplier. Racetrack needs upgrades? Pay the contractors. My penthouse elevator too slow. I almost bought the elevator manufacturer, then remembered my father repaired elevators and would personally slap me. My budgeting process now had the same structure as drunk texting. Tap first. Regret maybe never. Instead, I paid for a modernization package, $1. My father noticed immediately when he visited. He stepped into the elevator, listened to the motor, and said someone had installed new controls. I told him I had paid for it. He asked how much. I said $1. He thought it was a joke. My parents were the last people I wanted to tell about the card. Not because I did not trust them, because my mother would ask sensible questions I could not answer, and my father would try to return the card to whoever lost it. They already knew I was suddenly wealthy. I told them Kisaragi Ventures had done well. That was technically true if we defined done well as owns a hotel because breakfast was good. My mother accepted the penthouse with suspicion. My father spent 30 minutes examining the kitchen cabinets. Then my mother saw Kevin the dinosaur at Dollar Plaza. She asked why I owned a dinosaur. I said investment. She asked what return a dead dinosaur generated. I said joy. She said that was not an investment. I said emotional return. She told me I was still bad at math. This from the woman who taught middle school mathematics for 28 years. I could buy a billion-dollar hotel, but I could not win an argument with my mother. That is the true ceiling of male power. She eventually pulled me aside and asked whether I was doing anything illegal. I told her no. That was the truth as far as Mina could determine. She asked whether I was hurting anyone. No. Was I borrowing money I could not repay? No. Was I gambling? No. Did I understand what I was doing? I hesitated. That was the only question I could not answer. My mother stared at me for a moment, then told me to make sure I became useful before I became ridiculous. I promised. Then I walked into the mall atrium and saw Emmy had dressed Kevin the T. Rex in an enormous birthday hat. Too late. I was already ridiculous. A few days later, I decided to make Dollar Plaza useful. Instead of keeping it private, I reopened most of the mall to the public. But I did not charge rent to small local shops for the first year. I could afford renovations for $1 per vendor, so why not? We brought back restaurants, bookstores, game stores, clothing shops, and weird independent businesses that had been priced out of other malls. The old movie theater reopened with luxury seats. The indoor surfing pool became a paid attraction. Kevin remained in the atrium. People came just to take pictures with him. The giant muscular duck statue became even more popular. Nobody understood it. That made it art. Within weeks, the dead mall was crowded again. Local news loved the story. They called me eccentric. That was rich person vocabulary for this dude is clearly on some bullshit, but the building looks nice. Then I received an invitation that made even Mina curious. A private auction house in Switzerland was selling something I had never seen offered before. Not a car, not art, not land, a company, the entire company, and the auction accepted card settlement. The company was called Hexalife. It had once been a famous consumer robotics startup valued at $6 billion. Then it launched a home assistant robot that occasionally mistook glass doors for open space and attempted to continue through them with the confidence of a drunk uncle. Sales collapsed. Investors fled. The founder was tired. Now the controlling shareholders were selling the whole company through a private auction. Factories, patents, software, inventory, offices, brand, debts, lawsuits, employees, and one warehouse containing 14,000 unsold robots. Omar read the financial package and immediately developed a headache. Hexalife was losing $40 million per month. At this stage, the card was treating expensive invoices like toilet paper and my self-control like the toilet. I asked why. He said because manufacturing robots was expensive and selling almost none of them was bad for business. That seemed reasonable. Mina asked why I wanted it. I showed her a video of one robot attempting to fold a towel. It failed 6 times, got the towel stuck over its head, and calmly announced that the task was complete. I loved him. I needed that idiot in my house. Mina reminded me I could simply buy one robot. I told her the company had stopped retail sales. She said I could probably persuade them to sell me a unit. I told her buying the company sounded easier. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she opened her laptop and started reviewing the auction terms because she had finally accepted that this was her life. The auction took place inside a private conference center near Geneva. Unlike the dinosaur auction, there were no cameras and no champagne crowd. Only investment funds, technology companies, restructuring specialists, and one idiot who wanted a towel robot. Bids started at $800 million. A Japanese electronics group offered $950 million. A private equity fund went to $1.1 billion. I waited. Omar told me Hexalife was not worth much more than $1.4 billion after liabilities. I asked whether he thought it could be fixed. He said yes, but not by me personally. That was rude and accurate. The bidding reached $1.3 billion. Then slowed. I entered at 1.5. Everyone turned toward me. The electronics group went to 1.6. I went 2. Omar kicked me under the table. The private equity fund dropped out. The electronics group went to 2.1. I went 2.5. They stopped. Sold. $2.5 billion. The acquisition lawyers had arranged commercial card settlement after verifying my previous transactions. Apparently, once you successfully pay $1.4 billion by card, people stop asking whether your card has a daily limit. I tapped. The terminal displayed the silver one again. Approved. $1. I became the sole controlling owner of Hexalife. Omar immediately reminded me that I had also acquired its problems. Thousands of employees. Factories in 3 countries. Supplier contracts. Warranty claims. Software bugs. A public relations disaster, 4 pending lawsuits involving robots and glass doors. I asked if anyone had been seriously hurt. No, mostly the robots. One had driven directly through a sliding door at a luxury home and fallen into a swimming pool. The owner's security camera footage was so funny I had to watch it twice before Mina made me stop. I flew to Hexalife headquarters. The employees gathered in the main auditorium expecting a speech from their mysterious new owner. I had no speech. I had bought the company 48 hours earlier because I wanted a robot to fold towels badly. This was not Harvard Business School material. So I told them the simple version. I said I did not plan to fire half the company, strip the patents, or shut the factories. I wanted them to fix the product. I wanted the robots to be useful, funny, affordable, and incapable of body-slamming patio doors. Then I announced that we would replace the pressure to ship immediately with a 6-month engineering sprint. No rushed launch, no fake deadlines, no pretending a robot was ready because a quarterly earnings call existed. The chief engineer almost cried. Then the finance director explained that 6 more months would cost around $250 million. I asked which vendors needed payment. A lot. Parts suppliers, cloud computing, testing labs, factory leases, tooling, contractors. I could not pay salaries with the card directly, but the company had legitimate operating cash and revenue from older products. So I used the card for nearly everything external, preserving cash for payroll. I had become the human equivalent of giving a feral goblin a corporate Amex and telling him consequences were optional. Supplier invoice, $1. Testing contract, $1. Factory equipment, $1. Cloud services annual contract, $1. Industrial robots used to build the smaller robots, $1. The finance director watched our cash flow forecast transform from "we are doomed" to "why do our expenses look like a vending machine?" He asked Omar what was happening. Omar said proprietary financing. The finance director said that did not explain anything. Omar said he knew. I was proud of him. Then I met the towel robot. His model number was H6 Domestic Assistant. I named him Beans. Beans stood 4 feet tall with 2 arms, a rounded screen green face and soft wheels. An engineer handed him a towel. He folded it perfectly. I was disappointed. I had bought the company for the incompetent version. The engineer looked terrified. I told her I was joking. Then Beans turned, rolled toward a glass wall, stopped exactly 6 inches away, and announced, "Obstacle detected." The engineering team applauded. I applauded too. A $6 billion startup had nearly died because its robot could not understand Windows. Technology is just humanity spending billions to teach metal not to eat shit in obvious places. Hexalife gave me a new kind of attention. Buying yachts made me look rich. Buying a technology company made people think I had a strategy. That was dangerous because now business reporters started asking what my strategy was. I did not have one. So Omar created one retroactively. He described Kisaragi Ventures as a long-term investment platform focused on experience, infrastructure, consumer technology, and operational transformation. Those words sounded intelligent enough to hide the fact that our portfolio contained laundromats, olive oil, a dinosaur, a hotel, a dead mall, and 14,000 confused robots. Cassian sent me a message. "Tech now?" I replied with a photo of Beans holding a towel. He sent back a photo of himself wearing the chicken costume from our shopping challenge. I respected that he had actually done it. The next 6 months compressed into madness. Hexalife engineers rebuilt the robot software. We improved object recognition, navigation, balance, voice control, and safety. I insisted on one strange feature. If Beans became stuck, instead of silently failing, he had to say, "I have made a questionable decision." The engineers tried to remove it. I vetoed them. When the new robot launched, that line became viral. People loved it. Sales exploded. For the first time, one of my ridiculous purchases became genuinely successful because of something other than the card. Hexalife stopped losing money. Then it started making money. Omar told me the company could be worth $10 billion again if growth continued. I looked at the black card. I had paid $1. This thing was not just giving me cheap stuff. It was giving me leverage over reality. That made me more cautious for almost 3 days. Then Juno asked if we could rent a theme park for her birthday. I searched online. Private park rental packages existed, but the park she loved was huge and did not offer full closure except for corporate events. I called them. They quoted $2.8 million for an after-hours private event across most of the property. $1. We invited 500 friends, employees, local kids from community programs, and basically anyone connected to us who wanted to ride roller coasters without waiting in line. It was incredible. Then one major coaster broke down for the night. Juno joked that I should buy the park and fix it. Mina was standing beside us eating cotton candy. She slowly lowered the cotton candy. She said, "Do not." I laughed. I was not going to buy the park. That would be ridiculous. The next morning, the park's parent company called me. Someone had apparently mentioned my name to their chairman. The company was considering selling that specific park as part of a restructuring. The numbers were so obscene that my calculator deserved hazard pay and a long shower. I looked at Mina. Mina looked at the ceiling. I bought the theme park for $3.2 billion. $1. The broken coaster needed a new control system. $1. Then the park president asked what changes I wanted. I said 3 things. Better food, more shade, and one attraction so stupid people would travel internationally just to see it. The creative team accepted the challenge. 2 months later, they presented plans for Dragon Drop, a roller coaster that climbed inside a 200-foot artificial dragon, paused inside its mouth overlooking the park, then launched backward through smoke before dropping into a tunnel beneath a lake. Cost $400 million. Omar looked at me. I looked at the concept art. The dragon had glowing eyes. $1. Construction began immediately. Then I made a mistake. Not a financial mistake. A social media mistake. I posted the concept art with the caption, "Needed more dragon." The internet lost its mind. Pre-sale interest surged. Theme park fans made hour-long videos analyzing track geometry from one blurry rendering. Cassian commented, "Needs a helicopter landing pad." I replied, "Coward." The exchange received 2 million likes. Within a week, people had turned me and Cassian into some kind of billionaire anime rivalry. Fan edits showed us bidding against each other with glowing red eyes. One video put dramatic orchestra music over footage of me buying the hotel. Another made Cassian's chicken costume look like a final boss transformation. The strangest part was that I kind of enjoyed it. Before the card, nobody knew who I was. Now, strangers argued online about whether I was a genius, criminal, alien, secret prince, or 3 children inside a designer coat. The last theory was surprisingly popular. I avoided interviews. Every interview request eventually asked the same question. Where did the money come from? There was no answer I could give. Then one journalist found something interesting. Not illegal, just weird. Every major asset I owned had been purchased through some form of card settlement. The yacht, the hotel, Hexalife, the theme park. The pattern appeared in transaction records and seller disclosures. A finance reporter named Celeste Ward wrote an article titled, "Why does Ren Kisaragi buy billion-dollar assets with a credit card?" That article caused problems. Not because it exposed the $1 charges. Those were private. But it proved I had an unusual obsession with card payments. Celeste interviewed processors, bankers, brokers, and former sellers. They all confirmed the same impossible thing. My transactions never failed. One payment executive said my card had effectively unlimited authorization. That phrase went viral. Now everyone wanted to see the card. People zoomed into photographs of my wallet. Luxury store employees leaked stories about a plain black card with no bank logo. Someone created a fake version online and sold 3,000 copies before getting sued. Cassian called me. For once, he sounded serious. He asked if the card was real. I said all cards are real if you can hold them. He said I knew what he meant. I asked what he knew. He told me a payment industry executive had contacted him after seeing the article. The executive claimed there were rumors of non-standard settlement instruments used privately for decades. Very few. Maybe fewer than 10. No public issuer. No known credit limit. And nobody understood who funded them. I stopped smiling. For the first time since the card arrived, I had evidence I might not be the only person in the world with something like it. I asked Cassian for the executive's name. He gave it to me. Dr. Adrian Sato, retired payment systems architect, currently living in Singapore. Mina told me not to fly halfway around the planet based on billionaire gossip. I agreed. Then I bought a flight plan and fueled my jet. $2 total. She called me an asshole. I told her the shareholder agreement did not prohibit personality defects. My financial life looked like someone had snorted a spreadsheet and started making acquisitions during the ambulance ride. Singapore was hot enough to make my expensive shirt question its career choices. Dr. Adrian Sato lived in a quiet house filled with books, old computer hardware, and enough antique payment terminals to open the world's saddest electronics museum. He was 72, thin, and completely unimpressed by me. That was refreshing. Most people now reacted to my name before they reacted to my face. Dr. Sato invited Mina, Omar, and me inside, served tea, and asked to see the card. I placed it on the table. For the first time since I received it, someone looked at the black card without confusion. He looked annoyed. He said, "So they issued another one." Every hair on my arms stood up. I asked who they were. He said he did not know. I accused him of being dramatically useless. He ignored me and picked up the card with gloves. He examined the silver one symbol. Then he took out an old handheld reader from a drawer. The machine looked older than me. He inserted the card. The screen flashed random characters, then displayed a single line. Account class, singular. Sato nodded. Apparently that meant something. He explained that in the late 1990s he had worked on settlement infrastructure connecting banks across multiple markets. Once, during a system migration, his team had noticed impossible payment records. A merchant received full settlement. The cardholder was billed a symbolic amount. The difference did not appear as credit, debt, subsidy, insurance, or bank loss. The books balanced anyway. They assumed data corruption. Then they found older examples. One from the 1970s. One from the 1950s. Possibly one from before modern payment cards even existed, involving a private charge account that always billed the customer a single coin. I asked who had owned them. Sato said records were incomplete. Some were wealthy industrialists. One was an art collector. One was apparently a woman who bought hotels, ships, and a chain of bakeries, then disappeared from financial records in 1988. I asked whether any of them had gone bankrupt. He said no. Been arrested? No. Exploded? He looked at me. I said I was covering possibilities. He told me the cards were not supposed to exist according to any known financial system. They did not create money in the normal sense. They forced settlement. Once a legitimate voluntary purchase was accepted, the merchant side behaved as if full funds had arrived from a perfectly valid source. The cardholder side reduced the amount to a token charge, $1 in my case. Different historical cards use different token amounts. I asked about limits. Sato said he had never found one. I asked whether I could buy an entire public company. He said shares were normally classified as financial instruments, so probably not directly. But if I acquired the operating company through a negotiated asset sale or merger purchase where the consideration could be card settled, maybe. Mina made the mistake of saying, "Do not give him ideas." Sato looked at my purchase history. He realized that horse had already left the barn, bought the barn, and paid $1 for the county around it. I asked why I had received the card. He did not know. I asked what would happen if I lost it. He said previous reports suggested the cards would not work for anyone except the assigned holder. We tested that. Mina tried to buy a $1 bottle of water from a vending machine using my black card. Declined. The vending machine displayed card holder mismatch. I tried. Approved. My account charged $1, which meant I had paid exactly normal price for the first time using the card. I felt cheated. Sato laughed. Then he warned me about something I had not considered. The card could settle purchases. It did not erase ownership responsibility. Taxes, laws, regulations, licenses, employees, maintenance, and consequences remained real. I could practically hear common sense outside, pounding on the glass and yelling that I was a dumbass. If I bought an airline, I still needed pilots. If I bought a hospital, I still needed doctors. If I bought a nuclear reactor, I would probably be arrested before finding a card reader. I promised him I had no interest in nuclear reactors. Omar quietly closed a browser tab. I looked at him. He said it was research. Traitor. Sato also warned me not to assume every seller would accept a card just because I could pay. Ownership transactions required willing parties and legal structures. The black card was not mind control. That was obvious, but important. I could not point it at the Eiffel Tower and shout $1. France would simply tell me to piss off in a beautiful accent. Before we left, Sato showed me one old photograph. It was from 1986. A woman in a white suit stood beside a black helicopter. In one hand, she held a dark card. The image was grainy, but the symbol on the back looked familiar. A silver circle. Inside it, not the number 1, the number 0. I stared at it. Sato said that cardholders' recorded purchases were stranger than mine. No token charge at all. She apparently paid nothing. I asked what happened to her. He said nobody knew. Her name was Vivienne Roche. She vanished from public business life in 1988 after selling most of her companies. No confirmed death record. No recent photograph. Nothing. That should have made the story creepy. Instead, my first thought was that I had been out-discounted by a woman from the 80s. $0? That was bullshit. I had been walking around paying full supernatural retail. $1 entire every time. I felt like a coupon peasant. On the flight home, I could not stop thinking about the 0 card. Mina could. She slept for 7 hours. Omar built a model estimating how many dollars I had spent in supernatural transaction fees. 281. That was hilarious. My asset purchases totaled billions, and my direct card cost was less than a pair of designer shoes. Then the flight crew informed me that a thunderstorm had closed our destination airport temporarily. We diverted to another city and landed late at night. Because my schedule had been destroyed, I decided to visit one of Hexalife's distribution warehouses nearby. This was how I discovered the Great Robot Disaster. 4,000 new Beans units had been prepared for shipment. A software update had accidentally changed a navigation setting. The robots were supposed to return themselves to marked charging bays during final testing. Instead, they interpreted every yellow safety stripe on the warehouse floor as a charging destination. When I entered, hundreds of robots were parked in random lines facing walls, loading doors, forklifts, and one extremely confused vending machine. Every few seconds, one announced, "I have made a questionable decision." The warehouse sounded like a support group for tiny divorced men. I laughed until my stomach hurt. The engineers did not. Shipping deadline was the next morning. Fixing the software was easy. Updating 4,000 units manually was not. The warehouse network could push an update, but only after each robot connected through its maintenance mode. The usual process would take almost a full day. I asked whether there was equipment that could speed it up. The operations manager said yes. Hexalife had planned to buy automated programming carts next year, but the cost was too high. I asked how fast we could get them. There was a robotics integrator 2 hours away with 20 units in stock. I bought all 20, $1. But delivery would take 6 hours. I asked whether the integrator owned a helicopter. No, I did. My AH-160 was across the country on the yacht. Too far. So I called a heavy lift helicopter charter company. $1. 2 hours later, programming equipment descended into the warehouse yard beneath a helicopter, while 4,000 home robots waited inside like they had collectively forgotten why they entered a room. This card was doing unspeakable things to the concept of retail price, and retail price was not even getting dinner first. We updated all of them before sunrise. The shipment left on time. The operations manager said nobody would believe what had happened. I told him not to worry. Security footage leaked online by lunch. The video of hundreds of Beans units facing random walls while chanting, "I have made a questionable decision," became the biggest meme on the internet that week. Sales increased 17%. At this point, incompetence had become marketing. I started wondering whether I was actually managing companies or simply being carried by an invisible clown god. When I finally returned home, I discovered Cassian had sent me a present. It was a framed photograph of him in the chicken costume. Under it, he had written, "Still richer than you." Technically, maybe. His net worth was estimated around $22 billion. My companies and assets were climbing towards something similar on paper, but much of that value was private and impossible to measure. Also, I still had a normal personal checking balance that could be defeated by a medium-sized refrigerator. I hung the chicken photo beside my desk. Then I sent him a photograph of Kevin the dinosaur wearing a tiny replica chicken costume around one leg. He called me immediately. We spent 15 minutes arguing about whether dinosaurs could legally lose bets. This was adult wealth, apparently. Then Cassian mentioned he was launching a new luxury cruise company. He had purchased 2 older cruise ships and planned to renovate them. I asked why. He said he wanted to build the world's most ridiculous party ship. I said that sounded financially irresponsible. He reminded me I owned a robot company because I liked a towel video. Fair. He invited me to tour one of the ships before renovation. The ship was enormous but outdated. Old carpets, tiny televisions, a casino that smelled like 20 years of poor decisions. Cassian showed me the plans. New suites, restaurants, pools, club, theater, and a rooftop racetrack for electric carts. I was impressed. Then we reached the top deck. There was a huge empty area where an old mini-golf course had been removed. I asked what he planned to put there. He said another pool. Boring. I suggested a giant transparent sphere filled with water where guests could walk through an underwater tunnel while sharks swam overhead. He said that was insane. I reminded him he owned a cruise ship. He asked how much something like that would cost. I called the same aquarium company from our Dubai shopping challenge. They estimated $60 million plus structural reinforcement. Cassian said absolutely not. I said I would buy it as a gift. He refused. I insisted. He said accepting a $60 million aquarium from me would be weird. I told him I had paid $1 for his birthday present. I immediately realized what I had said. Silence. Cassian turned slowly. Mina closed her eyes. Omar looked at the floor. I had spent months hiding the card's $1 rule, and I had just revealed it because I was arguing about a shark tank on a cruise ship. Genius. Absolute genius. My mouth had raw-dogged operational security in front of a billionaire. Cassian asked what I meant. I considered lying. Then I looked at him. He had already helped me find Sato. He knew there was something impossible about my card, and despite being an annoying peacock, he had never actually tried to hurt me. So I showed him. We went to the ship's gift shop. I picked up a model of the cruise ship priced at $200. I tapped the black card. Approved. My phone showed $1. Cassian stared at the screen. Then I bought a $10,000 premium cruise package through the company's booking system. At that point, I was one impulse purchase away from needing an exorcist who specialized in venture capital. $1. He checked his company's payment side. Full amount received. Cassian stopped speaking for almost a minute. Then he looked at me and asked the question I had been expecting. Can we buy something stupid? That was how I knew telling him had been a mistake. Cassian approached supernatural finance exactly the way I had feared. Within 10 minutes, he had a whiteboard. Within 20 minutes, the whiteboard contained the words moon, stadium, airline, and can a person buy every hot dog in Chicago? Mina confiscated the marker. We agreed on rules. No governments, no critical infrastructure, no military equipment, no hospitals, no anything that would ruin normal people's lives just because 2 rich-looking idiots were bored. Cassian objected to being called rich-looking. He was actually rich. I told him I had a dinosaur. We moved on. The first experiment was intangible property. Could the card buy something that was not physically real? We already knew services worked. Insurance worked. Contracts worked. But what about rights? Cassian owned a small music label through one of his companies. He offered to sell me the master recording rights to an old electronic song from his catalog. The song had almost no current revenue and was valued at $80,000. We had lawyers write a clean voluntary sale agreement. His company generated a card payment request. I tapped. Approved. $1. I now owned the master rights to a song called Laser Hamster. I listened to it. It was terrible. The chorus consisted mostly of synthesizer squeaks and a man whispering hamster velocity. I understood why it was available. Then we tested naming rights. Cassian knew an arena operator selling temporary naming rights for a summer esports event. I purchased the 1-week event naming package for $12 million. $1. For 7 days, the venue was officially called the Kevin the Dinosaur Arena. Mina refused to attend. I bought a billboard across from her office displaying Kevin wearing sunglasses. $1. She threatened to quit. I raised her annual compensation package. $1 through her law firm. She stopped threatening to quit. Capitalism may be fake, but retention bonuses remain sacred. Next, Cassian wanted to test scale, not price, quantity. Could I buy an absurd number of separate physical objects in a single transaction and still pay $1? Hexalife needed new employee laptops across global offices anyway, so I ordered 12,000 high-end laptops from a corporate supplier on one master invoice. Total, $31 million. One transaction. $1 worked. Then we tested variety. A major wholesale company created a custom order containing 1,000 completely different product categories. Televisions, office chairs, cookware, bicycles, lawnmowers, refrigerators, coffee machines, tents, printers, tools, mattresses, exercise equipment, and enough random objects to furnish a suburban apocalypse. Total, $9 million, $1. We donated most of it through community organizations and disaster relief warehouses. The card did not care. One purchase could contain thousands of things. Cassian stared at the receipt and said, "Your card is basically a cheat code for Costco." That may have been the most accurate financial analysis anyone had produced. Then we tested something ridiculous enough to make Omar swear. A retired Airbus A380 was being sold by an airline for parts and conversion. It was one of the biggest passenger aircraft ever built, and this particular one still had most of its interior. Price, $36 million. I did not need an A380. Nobody needs an A380. But Cassian had recently bought a giant ranch in Nevada, and he wanted to turn the plane into a guest house. I asked how he planned to move it there. He admitted he had not reached that part of the idea. I bought the aircraft. $1. Now it was my problem. The A380 could still fly with maintenance and certification, but landing it near the ranch was impossible. My accountant had the expression of a man watching a chimpanzee perform surgery with a rewards card. There was no runway long enough. Cassian suggested cutting the plane apart and trucking it in. I refused. I had purchased an airplane, not an IKEA airplane kit. We needed a runway. There was an old private airfield 40 miles from the ranch with enough land to expand. The owner was willing to sell. Price, $28 million. $1. Then we hired an engineering company to lengthen and reinforce the runway. $1. Then upgraded the taxiway. $1. Then bought new navigation lighting. $1. Then hired a maintenance company to make the A380 airworthy for one final positioning flight. $1. The entire project cost me about $5 in actual card charges, and made every aviation professional involved ask increasingly desperate questions. 3 months later, the A380 landed at our expanded airfield. Cassian stood beside me filming the arrival. I asked what he planned to do now. He said nightclub. I reminded him he had originally said guest house. He said plans evolve. I told him he was a jackass. He called me the man who had purchased a plane to enable his jackassery. That was difficult to argue with. We renovated the A380 into the strangest private event space I had ever seen. One deck became bedrooms. The other became a lounge, game room, karaoke bar, and restaurant kitchen. The cockpit remained untouched. We built a swimming pool beside the runway because apparently our bullshit needed water features now. Then Cassian tried something I had tried early on. He asked if the card could buy cryptocurrency. Declined. Financial instrument. Gold bars? Physical commodity purchases worked. I bought a 1 kilogram gold bar from a reputable dealer. $1. Cassian's eyes lit up. Mina immediately warned us not to use commodity resale as a disguised cash machine. I agreed. We placed the gold bar under Kevin the Dinosaur in Dollar Plaza with a plaque that said, "Please do not lick." Someone licked the glass case within 4 hours. Humanity remains undefeated. Then Cassian asked about art commissions. I hired a famous sculptor to create an enormous bronze statue of Beans the robot holding a folded towel. Commission price, $5 million, $1. Hexalife installed it outside headquarters. Employees loved it. The artist did not understand why the robot had to be holding a towel. I told him history would judge us. History probably wanted a restraining order. Our experiments became more philosophical. Could I buy an experience? Yes. Private concerts, chef dinners, expeditions, flight training, and even a zero-gravity aircraft experience all worked. Could I buy education? Yes. Tuition processed as a voluntary service purchase worked if the school accepted card payment. I paid for advanced robotics training programs for 200 Hexalife employees through one corporate education invoice. $1. Could I buy time? Not literally, but I could buy exclusive venue access, consulting retainers, private transport, priority manufacturing slots, and other things that effectively purchased other people's scheduled capacity. $1 each. Could I buy luck? No. Cassian tried to count a casino chip package as entertainment services. Declined. Gambling instrument. The terminal actually displayed, "Nice try." That was new. We stared at it. The card had never been sarcastic before. Cassian laughed so hard he sat down on the floor. I was less amused. Until that moment I had treated the card like a strange machine with rules. Machines do not usually say "nice try." Someone, or something, had anticipated the attempt. I turned the card over. The silver one symbol looked the same. Then my phone buzzed. Not a bank notification. A push notification from an app I did not remember installing. Black icon. Silver one. The app had one screen. Transactions. 417. Qualified purchases. 413. Rejected purchases. 4. Account standing. Active. That was it. No settings. No support. No issuer. I showed Mina. She immediately took screenshots. Omar disconnected my phone from every network like the app might crawl out and buy something on its own. The price was so stupid that normal money would have curled into the fetal position and shit itself. Cassian looked thrilled. I told him to stop looking thrilled by suspicious supernatural software. He said this was the most interesting thing that had ever happened to him. I reminded him he had raced cars on frozen lakes and once spent a month living on a yacht shaped like a spaceship. He said this was better. The app disappeared after 10 minutes. Gone. No installation history. No stored files Omar could find. The screenshots remained. Most importantly, the numbers matched my records. 4 rejected purchases, gift card, money order, cashback, casino chips. It had counted every major attempt. That meant the system was watching transaction type in real time, maybe more. For the next week, I behaved like a responsible adult. Then the theme park called to tell me Dragon Drop was ahead of schedule. Responsible adulthood ended immediately. We visited the construction site. The artificial dragon was enormous, visible from miles away. Steel coaster track climbed through its body and emerged between its jaws. The creative team had added smoke effects, synchronized lighting, and a 40-foot animatronic tongue because someone had apparently lost parental supervision. I loved it. During testing, the ride vehicle paused in the dragon's mouth exactly as planned. Then the dragon's sound system malfunctioned and played the wrong audio file. Instead of a roar, it blasted a cheerful corporate safety announcement at full volume. The coaster launched backward while the dragon politely reminded riders to keep hands and feet inside the vehicle. I nearly died laughing. The creative director apologized. I told him to keep a version of it as a secret random event. 1 ride out of every 100 would get the polite dragon instead of the roar. That single stupid decision became one of the park's most popular features after opening. People rode again and again hoping to get customer service dragon. Merchandise sold out. We made plush dragons wearing tiny employee name tags. The park's revenue broke records. Omar presented the quarterly numbers and said my portfolio was now producing hundreds of millions in legitimate annual operating profit. That mattered. Even if the black card vanished tomorrow, I would still own functioning businesses and assets. I had gone from broke to financially independent without ever directly selling a $1 purchase for profit. I felt proud. Then my father saw a news report about the theme park and asked why my dragon roller coaster had a customer service voice. I told him brand differentiation. He asked if I knew what that meant. I admitted Omar had taught me. My father said at least I was learning. My mother asked if I was useful yet. I told her we had funded scholarships, reopened the mall, kept Hexalife employees working, and expanded local businesses. She nodded. Then she asked why there was a giant duck statue outside my office. I told her usefulness and dignity were separate metrics. She agreed with that more quickly than I expected. A month later, Cassian and I received invitations to a private luxury expo in Japan. The invitation promised rare cars, experimental aircraft, custom architecture, advanced robotics, and assets not normally offered to private buyers. Cassian called me the second he read that sentence. I already had my suitcase open, because after everything I had learned, there were still 4 words capable of deleting my self-control, not normally offered to buyers. The Japan Expo was held on a private island near Yokohama that had been converted into the world's most expensive showroom. There were no normal booths. A company selling custom villas had built an entire villa. A yacht manufacturer had parked 3 yachts beside the island. A robotics company had brought a mechanical bartender that could make cocktails, draw foam art, and judge your drink order with glowing eyebrows. An aviation company displayed a prototype electric aircraft on a rotating platform. I had stopped living above my means and started drop-kicking the entire concept of means into traffic. Cassian and I entered like 2 children whose parents had accidentally left a wallet unattended. Mina came with us specifically to prevent international nonsense. Almar came because somebody had to document the international nonsense for tax purposes. The first thing Cassian bought was a custom carbon fiber grand piano shaped like a stingray. He paid normal price. $2 million. I mocked him for being poor. He reminded me that without my card, I had less pocket cash than his chef. That ended the conversation. I bought a transforming conference table that could rise from the floor, split into sections, and hide touchscreens inside the surface. $1. Then I bought an autonomous luggage cart because it followed me around like a loyal metal dog. $1. Then I bought the bartender robot. The company representative said the display unit was not actually for sale. I tapped anyway. Declined. The terminal displayed seller consent required. Everyone looked at me. I looked at Cassian. He was trying not to laugh. The card had just publicly told me no because I behaved like an entitled jackass. I apologized to the representative. Then I asked if I could order a production unit. She said yes. I paid. $1. Lesson learned. The black card could bully mathematics. It could not bully people. Honestly, that was comforting. Also humiliating. I had just been disciplined by a rectangle in front of 40 wealthy strangers. The expo's private asset hall opened after lunch. Access required signing more paperwork than a mortgage. Inside, companies presented things usually sold only through private negotiations. A completed underground luxury bunker designed as a wine storage complex. A decommissioned offshore research platform converted into a resort concept. A private observatory with a 1-meter telescope. A historic theater. A mountain lodge accessible only by cable car. An entire collection of 30 vintage race cars sold as one lot. Then I saw the floating house. It was not really a house. It was a 3-story luxury residence built on a self-propelled platform, halfway between a yacht and a modern villa. Glass walls, rooftop garden, pool, 4 bedrooms, solar array, and electric propulsion for slow coastal movement. Price $45 million. I already owned a Megayacht. I had no need for a floating house. That meant absolutely nothing anymore. I bought it. $1. Cassian bought the second one because he refused to let me own the only ridiculous floating villa in our social circle. The manufacturer looked like they had won the lottery twice. Then we reached the last exhibit. It was presented by Arata Development Group, one of Japan's largest private construction firms. Their chairwoman, Mika Arata, was around my age and had the calm expression of someone who had been born into board meetings. She introduced a project called Sky Garden 1. It was a proposed vertical resort tower designed to stand nearly 1 kilometer tall on reclaimed coastal land. Hotels, residences, restaurants, observation decks, gardens, entertainment spaces, and a massive open-air atrium near the top. The project had received preliminary approvals but stalled because financing costs exploded. Arata Group was not selling the company. It was selling the entire project entity. Land rights, permits, architecture, development contracts, intellectual property, and existing site works. Price expectation, $12 billion. Cassian whispered, "Do it." Mina whispered, "I will push both of you into the ocean." I asked Mika why they were selling. She answered honestly. The tower would take years, cost far more than $12 billion to complete, and expose the owner to enormous construction risk. Buying the project was not buying a finished skyscraper. It was buying a very expensive problem. That made me pause. The card could handle vendor costs, but managing a 1-kilometer tower project sounded like inviting an earthquake to live in my inbox. I walked around the scale model. Every tap felt like I was slapping capitalism on the ass with its own terms of service agreement. There was a tiny rooftop park suspended nearly a kilometer above the ground. I asked if the design included a roller coaster. Mika said no. I said that seemed fixable. Mina physically grabbed my sleeve. I did not buy the tower. Everyone was shocked, including me. I had finally developed restraint. Then Mika asked if I wanted to purchase a 30% partnership stake in the project instead. Financial securities were blocked, but a direct joint venture membership purchase through the project company might qualify as business property. Mina reviewed the structure. It could work. Price $3.6 billion. I tapped. $1. Apparently my restraint had a half-life of 11 minutes. Mika's company kept control and construction expertise. I got project participation, creative input, and a contractual obligation to fund my portion of approved construction expenses. For a normal investor, that last part was terrifying. For me, approved contractor invoices were basically dollar store items with more concrete. Mika quickly discovered this. The first major foundation contract required a $900 million payment milestone. Her finance team expected a wire. I asked for a card invoice. They thought I was joking. Mika did not. She had seen me buy the project interest by card. They created the payment request, $1. Full amount settled. Mika called me privately. She asked what kind of credit facility I had. I told her private. She asked which bank could authorize $900 million instantly. I said a very relaxed one. She did not laugh. Unlike Cassian, Mika hated mysteries she could not model in a spreadsheet. She spent the rest of the expo studying me like I was a financial disease. That night, our group had dinner at a tiny sushi restaurant with only 8 seats. No cameras, no press, no billion-dollar projects. The chef served each piece directly by hand. It was one of the best meals I had ever eaten. The bill for 4 people was around $2,000. I reached for the black card. Omar stopped me. He paid with a normal company card. I asked why. He said he wanted one meal in our lives to have a mathematically sane receipt. Fair. Then the chef told us the building owner had tripled his rent and he might have to close in 6 months. I looked at Omar. Omar looked at me. He said no. I asked how much the building was worth. He said Ren. The chef laughed because he thought we were joking. 2 days later, I bought the entire small commercial building for $18 million. $1. Then I gave the restaurant a long-term lease at its old rent. Omar admitted that was acceptable. Mina asked what I would do with the other floors. I turned them into affordable studio spaces for young chefs and artists. That cost me 6 renovation transactions. $6. My mother later heard about it and said that counted as useful. I considered that a 5-star review. Meanwhile, construction began on Sky Garden 1. The project became a magnet for wild design ideas because Mika made the mistake of giving me a seat on the creative committee. I suggested an observation deck with transparent floor panels. Approved. Cassian suggested a rooftop go-kart track. Rejected. He appealed. Rejected again. I suggested a public garden midway up the tower with real trees. Approved after engineers confirmed it was possible. Cassian suggested an indoor cliff diving pool. Mika asked him to stop attending meetings. He bought a small stake from another partner just so she could not remove him completely. He paid normal money for it. I mocked him again. He told me to choke on my $1 card. Mina noted that this was not recommended payment handling procedure. The tower became our most expensive ongoing project. Foundation work alone involved dozens of contracts. Steel procurement, concrete, engineering, wind tunnel testing. Safety systems, vertical transportation. My restraint had become a decorative organ, like an appendix-wearing designer sunglasses. Each accepted invoice cost me $1. But the strangest thing happened when we tried to bundle vendors. Mika's team created a consortium invoice covering 5 construction firms under one payment. I tapped, declined. The terminal displayed independent merchant aggregation. We separated the invoices by actual merchant. All 5 worked, $1 each. Another rule, the card did not allow fake bundling just to reduce the token charge, which was hilarious because I was buying billion-dollar assets for $1, but apparently the system still cared whether I tried to save $4 more. Whoever designed this thing had the energy of an all-powerful accountant with a petty streak. By then, my transaction count was approaching 600. The strange app had not returned. I almost forgot about it. Then, during a late-night planning meeting, my phone lit up by itself. Black screen. Silver one. A new message appeared. Spending behavior atypical. I stared at it. Cassian leaned over my shoulder. The message changed. Category breadth exceptional. Then another line. Milestone approaching. No number. No explanation. The screen went dark. I restarted the phone. Nothing. Mina asked what milestone. I had no clue. Omar checked the screenshot. Cassian looked delighted again. Mika, who had not known the truth about the card, looked between all of us. Then she asked why my phone was judging my spending behavior. There are moments when a secret becomes too stupid to protect. I showed her the card. Then I bought the prototype bartender robot she had been admiring earlier through the manufacturer's finalized sales invoice. Price $280,000. $1. Mika watched the merchant confirmation. Then my bank charge. She sat down. She asked how long I had had it. I told her. She asked how much I had purchased. Omar gave her an approximate total. She stared at him, then at me, then at Cassian. Finally she said, "And your response to this was to build a dragon roller coaster?" I said it was a very good roller coaster. Mika covered her face with both hands. Mina smiled. At last, another woman understood her pain. Mika reacted to the card very differently from Cassian. Cassian saw infinite shopping. Mika saw a research project. Within 1 week, she built a database containing every transaction we could verify, organized by merchant type, settlement amount, jurisdiction, asset class, payment rail, authorization time, and rejection reason. Omar loved her immediately. not romantically, accountantly. They spoke to each other in spreadsheet language for hours. I understood maybe half of it. Mina understood all of it and hated that she did. The mysterious milestone approaching message became our main question. Was it transaction count, total settlement value, number of merchant categories, geographic coverage, amount of stupid shit I had bought while pretending it was research? Cassian argued strongly for the last option. Mika noticed something first. The app had said category breadth exceptional. That suggested the card tracked what kinds of things I bought, not just how much. So she created a category map: food, retail, transport, insurance, real estate, business acquisitions, intellectual property, construction, hospitality, aviation, marine, entertainment, education, professional services, art, commodities, technology, and one category she labeled Ren Nonsense that contained dinosaur, giant duck, robot statue, transparent piano, floating villa, and dragon coaster. I argued that those belonged in established categories. She refused. We decided not to force the milestone. That lasted 4 days. Then Hexalife's marketing department suggested making an animated short film about beans. The plan was simple: 15 minutes, online release, cute story, modest budget. I approved it. A week later, a major animation studio offered to co-produce a full theatrical film instead. Budget $120 million. I asked whether we could pay production costs by card. Of course, $1 for the studio contract. Then I learned the studio itself was struggling after 2 expensive flops. I was making purchases with the same energy as a sleep-deprived goblin buying cursed items on Marketplace at 4 a.m. I did not ask if it was for sale. I had grown. I had matured. I had become responsible. The studio CEO asked whether Kisaragi Ventures might be interested in buying a controlling interest. That did not count as my fault. The structure was not a publicly traded security because the studio was privately held. We negotiated a direct company purchase with the founders keeping a minority stake. Price $4.8 billion. I tapped. $1. Mina watched from the conference room. She said, "You lasted 4 days." I told her that was personal growth. The studio was called Comet House Animation. Its artists were brilliant. Its previous management had simply spent too much money trying to make every movie appeal to every human being alive. The Beans movie did not need that. I had one direction: make it funny. The film became about a home robot trying to prepare a surprise birthday breakfast while everything in the house went wrong. Beans burned toast, fought a vacuum cleaner, accidentally ordered 600 lemons, and spent the final act trying to stop a runaway birthday cake from rolling downhill through the city. There was no villain, no world-ending laser, no tragic robot war, just one little idiot trying very hard. Test audiences loved it. Cassian demanded a cameo as himself. I refused. He offered to pay. I refused harder. He purchased the distribution rights in one tiny territory through his media company, just so his name would appear in the credits. I called him pathetic. He called it vertical integration. Mika called both of us exhausting. The movie premiered at Dollar Plaza. We converted the entire central atrium into a red carpet event around Kevin the dinosaur. Beans robots handed out popcorn. One of them dropped a bucket on a celebrity's shoe and announced, "I have made a questionable decision." The clip went viral before the movie even started. The film became a huge hit. Children loved Beans. Adults loved the jokes. Merchandise exploded. Suddenly, the robot company I bought because of a towel failure owned one of the most popular animated characters in the world. Omar showed me licensing revenue projections. I asked whether we could make a Beans restaurant at the theme park. He said yes. I asked whether the menu could include 600 lemons somehow. He told me to leave food service to professionals. Fair. During the premiere, my phone buzzed. The black app had returned. Transactions, 811. Qualified purchases, 805. Rejected purchases, 6. I counted the rejections. Gift card, money order, cashback, casino chips, display bartender robot without seller consent. Bundled independent construction invoices. Perfect match. Below the numbers was a progress bar. No label. It was 81% full. Mika nearly took my phone out of my hand. Cassian looked like someone had announced a secret level in his favorite game. Omar calculated immediately. If the progress bar corresponded directly to transaction count, 1,000 qualified attempts or 1,000 total attempts could be the milestone. Mina told us not to turn my financial anomaly into an achievement hunt. She was right. So, naturally, Cassian started listing things we could buy. I stopped him. For once, I did not want to spam 189 pointless purchases just to trigger a mystery. If the card had selected me for some reason, I did not want to respond by buying 189 decorative toilets. Cassian crossed decorative toilets off his list with visible disappointment. Instead, I decided to let normal business spending move the count. It happened faster than expected. Between Hexalife suppliers, theme park construction, hotel renovation, Sky Garden contractors, Comet House productions, and Dollar Plaza merchants, I was making approved card purchases every day. Some were huge, some were small. Steel contract, $1. Animation rendering service, $1. Replacement roller coaster sensors, $1. 20,000 hotel towels, $1. The phrase financial discipline now sounded like something people whispered before spanking a Bloomberg terminal. A custom shark tunnel for Cassian's cruise ship, because I eventually won the argument, $1. He still complained about accepting the gift. Then he held his first cruise preview party under the sharks and admitted it was awesome. I made him say it twice. At 900 transactions, nothing happened. At 950, nothing. At 999, the app did not appear. That made us nervous. The 1,000th qualified transaction happened at the dumbest possible time. I was at Dollar Plaza with Juno and Malik, eating fried chicken from a new restaurant in the food court. The owner mentioned he wanted to add outdoor seating, but commercial umbrellas were more expensive than expected. I told him to send the invoice to the mall office. He had already received a quote from a supplier for 30 large umbrellas, tables, planters, and heaters. Total, $82,000. I approved it on my phone and paid with the black card, $1. My screen froze. The lights in the food court did not flicker. Thunder did not crash. No mysterious person appeared. Instead, my phone played the default notification sound. A cheerful little ding. The black app opened. Milestone complete. Below it, qualified merchant settlements, 1,000. Account review, passed. I stared at the next line. Purchase ceiling removed. My mouth went dry. Cassian was not there, so for once nobody immediately yelled something irresponsible. Juno read the screen over my shoulder. She asked the obvious question, what ceiling? I had no answer. I had already bought billion-dollar companies. If there had been a ceiling before, I had never found it. Then another line appeared. Complex settlement access enabled. The app vanished. The card itself changed. A thin silver line appeared along the edge, as if metal were spreading beneath the black surface. I nearly dropped it into my fried chicken. Malik grabbed my wrist before I could. That would have been an embarrassing end to supernatural finance. Mina arrived 20 minutes later. Mika joined by video call. Omar arrived with a laptop and no emotional preparation. Cassian found out and flew in that evening. He walked into my office, saw the silver-edged card and said, "We need to buy a mountain." Mina told him to shut up. Mika focused on the phrase complex settlement. She thought it might mean multi-party purchases. Previously, fake aggregation had failed because separate merchants could not be combined into one transaction. Maybe complex settlement allowed legitimate multi-party deals where several sellers were part of one acquisition. That mattered for large companies, real estate portfolios, media rights packages, and almost every complicated asset sale. Omar asked what purchase ceiling removed meant. Nobody knew. Cassian suggested buying something worth $100 billion. Everyone ignored him. Then my lawyer received a message. Not an email, not a call. A physical envelope delivered by courier to her office. Black paper. Silver writing. Inside was an invitation. No sender name. No company logo. Just an address in southern France. A date 3 weeks away. And one sentence. For holders whose ceilings have been removed. At the bottom was the silver circle symbol. Inside it was the number 0. Vivienne Roche, or someone connected to her. Sato had shown us the photograph. Now somebody with the 0 symbol knew I had reached the milestone. Cassian wanted to come. Mina said absolutely not. Mika wanted to come for research reasons. Mina said absolutely not. Omar wanted to stay home, which proved he remained the smartest member of our group. I decided I would go with Mina and security. Then I changed my mind. Not because I was afraid, because I had learned one important lesson from every absurd purchase I had made. Never walk into a strange situation without owning an unnecessary transportation option. So I bought a luxury sleeper train. Not a ticket, a train. A private rail company in Europe was selling a restored 12-car luxury train used for charters. Bedrooms, dining cars, lounge, observation car, kitchen, staff quarters, and polished wood everywhere. My portfolio looked like a billionaire had suffered a concussion inside a toy store and refused medical attention. Price, $160 million. I bought the operating company along with the train so it retained rail access agreements and licenses. $1. Mina asked why I needed a train to attend a meeting in France. I told her because arriving by car would be normal. She said I had become allergic to normality. I said normality had never bought me a dinosaur. The train company arranged our route. Cassian somehow booked a cabin through the public charter system before Mina could stop him. He paid full published rate, which I found deeply funny. Mika joined in Switzerland. Omar claimed he was staying home. Then he discovered the train had a dedicated office car with satellite internet and changed his mind. Juno and Malik begged to come. I refused because for once this meeting might involve people who understood the card, and I did not want to drag my friends into the unknown. Juno called me boring. I accepted that as progress. The night before we left, I stood alone in Dollar Plaza under Kevin the Dinosaur. The mall was closed. The giant duck statue watched me from across the atrium with its stupid cowboy hat. I held the card under the lights. Blackface. Silver edge. Silver one. For months I had been asking what I could buy. Now, for the first time, I wondered what the card wanted me to buy. Then my phone buzzed. A normal text from Cassian. Can the train have a karaoke car? I stared at the message. Mystery ruined. I replied. Already ordered. $1. The train was a terrible idea. It was also one of the best things I had ever bought. Our first evening crossing Europe included a 6-course dinner, live piano in the lounge, mountain views through giant windows, and Cassian singing karaoke so badly that 2 staff members quietly escaped into the next carriage. He performed Laser Hamster, the terrible song whose master rights I owned. I tried to revoke permission while he was singing. Mina informed me that copyright law did not work like a remote control mute button. Useless profession. Mika spent most of the journey studying historical information about Vivienne Roche. The public record was strange. Vivienne had appeared in European business circles during the late 1970s with no obvious family fortune. Within 10 years, she owned hotels, shipping companies, department stores, vineyards, publishing houses, and a luxury train operator. Then, in 1988, she sold almost everything. After that, almost nothing. No interviews, no public appearances, no reliable residence. Cassian said she sounded like me with better discipline. I said she had a $0 card, so technically she was a cheapskate. Omar looked up from his laptop and asked whether we could please respect the mysterious, possibly immortal financier who had summoned us to an unknown location. I said there was no evidence she was immortal. He said the fact that I selected that specific part of his sentence was the problem. We arrived in southern France on a bright afternoon. The address from the invitation belonged to an old hilltop estate surrounded by vineyards. A driver met us at the station. I asked whether the estate was for sale. Mina told me I was not allowed to ask that for the next 24 hours. The estate was enormous but not flashy. Stone buildings, gardens, fountains, olive trees, and terraces overlooking the countryside. Security checked our invitation, not our names. Then they asked me to tap my black card against a small reader beside the gate. The reader lit silver. Approved holder. The gate opened. Cassian tried tapping one of his normal cards after me. The reader displayed guest, please behave. I'd never seen him look so personally attacked by a gate. The entire deal smelled like premium grade bullshit wearing a tailored suit, and naturally I wanted in. Inside the main house we found around 30 people. Some were bankers, some were lawyers, some were business owners. Most were guests like mine. Only 5 people wore small silver pins showing circles with numbers inside. 1, 2, 5, 10, and a symbol that looked like the Japanese character for 100 yen. I stared. Different token amounts. Sato had been right. A tall man in a green suit noticed my silver-edged card and introduced himself as Luca Moretti. He held up a dark red card marked with a silver 5. His purchases always charged €5. I laughed. He said, "You think that is funny?" I said yes. Then a woman named Hanamori showed us her midnight blue card. She was charged 100 yen per purchase. That was less than my dollar most days. I felt financially oppressed. Cassian was fascinated. He began asking everyone what they had bought. Luca owned restaurants, vineyards, apartment buildings, and a football club. Hana owned technology companies, art galleries, a chain of mountain resorts, and apparently the world's largest private collection of antique vending machines. The man with the 10 card, Yusuf Darzi, had used his mostly for industrial equipment and factories. The woman with the 2 card, Celia Grant, had purchased thousands of acres of farmland and several food companies. I asked whether any of them had bought a dinosaur. No. A Megayacht? 2 had. A theme park? No. A broken robot company because of a towel video? Everyone looked at me. Finally, I had achieved something unique. Then the room became quiet. An older woman entered from the terrace. White hair cut short, white suit. Straight posture. She looked around 70, maybe a little older. I recognized her immediately from Sato's photograph. Vivienne Roche, alive. She wore no pin. She did not need one. In her hand was a glossy black card with a silver circle. Inside the circle was 0. She greeted the room calmly. Then she looked directly at me. "Ren Kisaragi," she said. My stomach tightened. She smiled. "I hear you bought a dinosaur." That was not the opening I expected. I said yes. She asked how much. $100 million. She asked why. I said another rich guy wanted it. Cassian raised his hand and admitted he was not actually the rich guy from that auction. I told him nobody asked. Vivienne laughed. The tension vanished. She invited the holders and guests to dinner. The whole mysterious gathering turned out to be less like a secret society and more like the world's strangest alumni event. People compared payment failures. Luca had tried to buy lottery tickets. Declined. Celia had tried to pay a court fine. Declined. Hana once attempted to purchase a prepaid travel card. Declined. Yusuf tried to use his card to settle a personal loan directly. Declined. The rules were consistent. Actual voluntary purchases worked. Money substitutes, gambling instruments, forced payments, debt repayment, and financial securities generally did not. I asked whether anyone knew where the merchant money came from. Nobody did. Not even Vivienne. She had spent 48 years trying to trace it. Every investigation ended in clean settlement records with no funding source that should logically exist. I asked whether the cards were magic. Vivienne said that was not a financial term. I asked whether "what the hell is this bullshit" was a financial term. Mina kicked me lightly under the table. Vivienne said no, but it was closer. She explained the milestone. Every holder she knew received basic access first. After 1,000 qualified merchant settlements, the card expanded to handle complex settlement structures. Multiple willing sellers could participate in one legitimate purchase. A company acquisition involving dozens of owners could settle as one transaction. A property portfolio with multiple title holders could settle together. An asset package crossing several legal entities could work if the entire arrangement represented one genuine purchase. I was so far beyond a normal budget that my debit card probably considered me legally dead. The card still would not allow fake bundling. The transaction had to exist as one real contract. That was why the system had called it complex settlement. I asked about the purchase ceiling. Vivienne smiled. Apparently basic holders did have a ceiling, not a dollar amount, a complexity ceiling. Before the milestone, there were certain transactions the card would refuse because too many settlement paths were involved. Afterward, that ceiling disappeared. So Cassian's dream of buying a $100 billion company was technically possible if someone voluntarily sold it under an eligible structure. He looked at me. I told him not to start. Vivienne said she had crossed her milestone in 1981. I asked what happened after that. She said life became much easier and much more ridiculous. That sounded familiar. Then I asked the most important question. Why had she disappeared? She took a sip of wine. Because she got bored. That was it. No assassination attempt, no secret government prison, no curse. She had simply realized that buying everything she wanted had removed the challenge from wanting things. So she sold most of her companies, kept a few properties, and spent decades traveling, studying art, and occasionally mentoring new cardholders. I stared at her. The mysterious zero-card legend had basically rage-quit capitalism because the game became too easy. That was almost disappointing. Then she added that she had also disappeared because journalists were annoying as hell. That I understood completely. After dinner, Vivienne took us downstairs. Beneath the estate was a modern gallery hidden under the old stone building. Inside were objects acquired by previous holders over decades. A prototype electric car from 1974, a gold mechanical calculator, a full suit of samurai armor, an enormous 19th century globe, a vintage computer built for a bank, a tiny experimental jet, a movie prop castle gate, a 12-foot crystal chandelier shaped like a jellyfish. The collection had no theme except someone could buy it, so someone did. I felt at home. Vivienne stopped in front of a glass case. Inside was an old metal charge plate, the kind used before modern credit cards. Stamped into it was a circular symbol. Not 0, not 1, a star. She said it was the oldest confirmed object connected to the settlement system, dated 1928. The owner had been a hotelier named Edmund Vale. His account records showed something impossible. He was not charged a fixed amount. Instead, every purchase reduced his balance by 1 unit of something no bank recognized. Vivienne had no idea what that meant. The records ended in 1933. I asked if Edmund disappeared too. No. He died in 1962 at age 84 after apparently spending retirement breeding extremely ugly dogs. Once again, the mystery refused to become become dramatic. I respected that. Vivienne then handed me a folder. Inside were documents for the reason she had invited us. Every few years, the holders arranged a private marketplace. Not because they needed discounts, because some assets were too strange, complicated, or illiquid for normal buyers. Historic estates, research vessels, private islands, film libraries, prototype transportation projects, unfinished resorts. Collections too large to split up. Companies whose owners wanted one clean sale. Complex settlement access made those purchases easy. The market would begin the next morning. Cassian was practically vibrating. Mina told him again that he was not the cardholder. He said he could still provide ideas. That was exactly what I feared. The final page contained a preview of 20 listed assets. I read them slowly. A Mediterranean island resort, a private train network company, a historic castle portfolio, a fleet of expedition ships, a robotics patent library, a movie studio backlot the size of a small town, a chain of ski resorts, a private observatory complex. Then item 19, Ocean Crown, a partially completed megayacht, 168 meters long, 3 helipads, indoor botanical garden, submarine hangar, 2 swimming pools. At some point the line between investing and being a rich-looking dumbass had dissolved into expensive soup, a concert hall, a rotating glass observation lounge beneath the waterline. Estimated completion cost $600 million. Cassian looked at me. I told him I already had a megayacht. He said this one had a botanical garden. I reminded him my first yacht already had 6 decks. He said this one had a concert hall. I told him to shut up. Then I read item 20. There was no price, no photograph, only a company name. Astra Habitat Systems. Asset type, Aerospace Hospitality Development Company. Description, confidential until bidder qualification. I looked at Vivienne. She smiled. Tomorrow, she said. Cassian whispered, Space Hotel. Mina whispered, do not manifest that sentence. I closed the folder. For the first time in months, I genuinely did not know what I wanted to buy next, which meant I slept terribly. The private marketplace did not work like a normal auction. That made sense after 5 minutes. If 6 people in the room could bid 10 billion, 20 billion, or 100 billion and still personally pay a token amount, price competition would become completely stupid. Vivienne had learned that lesson in 1982, when 2 cardholders allegedly bid $11 trillion for a hotel in Vienna, before the seller panicked and canceled the auction, so the marketplace used seller-selected offers. Every asset had a minimum acceptable price. Qualified buyers could meet or exceed it, but sellers also considered future plans, proof of operational ability, closing terms, and sometimes personal preference. The cards solved payment. They did not solve whether the owner thought you were an idiot. This system was probably designed specifically because people like me existed. The first listing was a group of 6 historic castles owned by 3 families and 2 property companies. Complex settlement meant the entire package could be purchased under one contract even though the money had to be distributed among multiple sellers. Luca bought it for 1.8 billion euros. His card charged him 5 euros. I laughed again. He told me to enjoy my dollar poverty. Hannah purchased the antique vending machine collection that came with an entire warehouse. Of course she did. Celia bought agricultural land and a food processing business. Yusuf acquired a factory automation company. The room operated with shocking professionalism, considering several people could buy billion-dollar assets for less than airport coffee. Then the movie backlot came up. Comet House needed more production space. The property contained sound stages, outdoor sets, workshops, offices, costume warehouses, and a full fake downtown district used for filming. It even had a fake subway entrance that led nowhere. I wanted it immediately. Minimum price $2.2 billion. Another buyer wanted the land for redevelopment. The seller asked what each of us would do with the site. The other buyer proposed luxury apartments. I proposed keeping the studio, expanding animation production facilities, and turning part of the fake downtown into a public behind-the-scenes attraction where visitors could watch filmmaking. Then Cassian whispered something. I added a beans-themed cafe. The seller's granddaughter, who was sitting at the table, smiled. We won. $2.6 billion. Complex Settlement distributed the funds among 11 ownership entities. My card charged $1. The silver edge briefly flashed. I felt like I had just discovered bulk checkout for corporate law. Mina looked disturbed by how happy that made me. Next came the expedition ships. I passed. The observatory complex. I passed. The ski resorts. I almost bid until Mika reminded me I did not ski. I said I could learn. She said I could learn without buying 12 mountainside hotels. Excellent point. Then Ocean Crown appeared on the screen. The unfinished Megayacht made impulse purchase look modest. 168 meters, 17 guest suites, crew of 90, 2 pools, concert hall, botanical garden under a retractable glass roof, hospital suite, diving center, submarine hangar, 3 helicopter landing areas, and, for reasons no engineer could explain with a straight face, a bowling alley below deck. The situation had escalated from questionable to delete my browser history if I die levels of financial depravity. The original owner had abandoned the project after design changes pushed completion cost beyond sanity. Minimum acquisition price for the unfinished vessel and contracts, $800 million. Estimated remaining completion, $600 to $900 million. Cassian leaned toward me. I covered his mouth with one hand. I was not buying another yacht. He removed my hand and pointed out that this was not another yacht. This was a mega yacht plus a greenhouse plus a concert venue plus a bowling alley. I told him those words did not help. Luca offered $900 million. I stayed quiet. Hana offered $1 billion. Still quiet. Cassian began sweating on my behalf. Then the seller mentioned the yacht had a fully automated 12-car garage accessible through a side-loading platform. I lifted my offer card. Mina muttered something that sounded like a prayer for patience. I offered $1.3 billion and a commitment to complete the vessel with the existing shipyard rather than moving construction elsewhere. Hana laughed and withdrew. Luca went to 1.4. I went 1.5. The seller chose me because keeping the shipyard contract protected hundreds of jobs. That sounded noble. The truth was, I mostly wanted the underwater rotating lounge. $1.5 billion. $1. I now owned 2 mega yachts. I named the unfinished one Financial Advice. Omar said absolutely not. I named it Reasonable Decision. Mina said that was worse. Cassian suggested Yacht 2, Electric Boogaloo. Everyone rejected him. We temporarily kept Ocean Crown as the project name. The shipyard asked for the next construction milestone that afternoon. $300 million. $1. At this point, my card was raw-dogging shipbuilding economics with the confidence of a man wearing socks in the jacuzzi. I stopped trying to understand it. Then came Astra Habitat Systems. The room changed. Even the other cardholders sat forward. A representative entered with 3 engineers and a lawyer. The presentation screen showed Earth from orbit. Cassian silently punched me in the shoulder with excitement. Mina looked like she wanted to leave the planet before the presentation even started. Astra was not building a giant science fiction city in space. Not yet. It was building something much funnier, a luxury orbital hotel. The company had spent 12 years developing modular private space habitats with reusable launch partners. It had tested life support hardware, flown small demonstration modules, trained crews, and secured agreements for future launches. The first commercial station, called Astra 1, was planned as a rotating cluster of modules with 12 guest cabins, observation cupolas, a restaurant area, exercise space, research capacity, and 1 large transparent viewing dome. The company had serious technology. It also had a serious money problem. Spaceflight was expensive. Investors wanted faster returns. The founders refused to turn the station into a pure research platform because their dream was civilian tourism. So they were selling a controlling business interest and its development obligations to a buyer willing to keep funding the project. Minimum purchase price, $14 billion. Future development budget, likely another 20 to 30 billion over several years. Omar whispered that this was exactly the kind of company my card made unfairly possible. External vendor costs were the largest burden. Launch services, hardware manufacturing, testing, ground facilities, insurance, specialized contractors. Most could potentially be purchased by card. Payroll and regulatory obligations would remain, but Kisaragi Ventures had plenty of legitimate operating income now. Cassian whispered, Space Hotel. Mina whispered, I hate that you were right. The founders presented their conditions. They wanted to retain engineering control. They wanted no cuts to safety spending. They wanted the project to remain civilian and hospitality focused. They wanted a buyer committed for at least 10 years. Those conditions made me like them more. I asked one question. Would the hotel have normal hotel keycards? If my younger self had seen this receipt, he would have shit through both legs of his jeans and apologized to the bank. The lead engineer stared at me. I explained that if I bought a $14 billion space hotel and still got locked out of my room because the key demagnetized, I would consider the species a failure. Nobody laughed except Cassian. Tough room. I submitted an offer. $18 billion. One of the other holders offered 20. Normally I would have raised the price immediately, but this marketplace was not about winning with the biggest number. So I added commitments. Keep the founders in operational control. Fully fund safety testing. Build training scholarships for engineers. Partner with universities. Reserve several annual research slots at cost. And, most importantly, do not put a casino in space, no matter what Cassian suggested later. Cassian objected loudly. The founders laughed. The other bidder wanted to restructure Astra around satellite manufacturing. The founders chose me. $22 billion final agreed value after debt and project obligations. Mina reviewed the documents. Omar reviewed the cash flow structure. Mika reviewed the engineering governance. Cassian reviewed renderings of the bar. I held the black card above the terminal. Then I stopped. Everyone looked at me. I had bought hotels, yachts, companies, a theme park, an airplane, a dinosaur, a train, a floating house, a movie studio, and enough robots to start a very polite invasion. But buying a company that planned to send tourists into orbit felt different, not scary, just enormous. For once I asked whether I was purchasing something because it was a good idea or because I wanted to see if the card worked. The answer was both. That was not comforting. Vivienne watched from the back of the room. She said nothing. I asked the Astra founders whether they would still pursue the project if I walked away. They said yes, but more slowly and probably at smaller scale. I asked whether they believed the design could be made safe enough for normal guests. They said yes after years of testing. I asked whether anyone in the room had suggested putting a bowling alley in orbit. No. Good. We had learned from Ocean Crown. I tapped. The terminal went black. Silver one. Then a second line appeared. Complex settlement verified. Approved. $1. The founders received confirmation. The sellers were paid. Kisaragi Ventures became controlling owner of Astra Habitat Systems. Cassian stood up and whispered, "We own a space hotel." I told him he owned nothing. He said emotionally he owned at least the minibar. Mina told both of us to sit down. I had just paid $1 for a $22 billion aerospace company, and somehow I was still getting ordered around like a child at a restaurant. Power is an illusion. Later that afternoon, Vivienne found me alone on the terrace. She asked whether I regretted buying Astra. I said I did not know yet. She nodded. That was apparently the right answer. Then she asked why I had waited before tapping the card. I said because the card makes price meaningless, but it does not make choices meaningless. Vivienne smiled. For the first time, she looked impressed instead of amused. Then she ruined the moment by asking why I had still bought the second Megayacht. I said underwater rotating lounge. She said fair enough. News of the Astra acquisition reached the public before my train reached Switzerland. Apparently hiding a $22 billion aerospace deal is difficult when 300 employees suddenly receive an internal message beginning with, "Welcome to Kisaragi Ventures." By breakfast, every financial network had my face on television. The headlines were insane. Mystery billionaire enters private space race. Ren Kisaragi buys orbital hotel developer. Theme park owner now betting on space tourism. One channel displayed a graphic connecting my yacht, dinosaur, robots, theme park, hotel, and space company with arrows, as if investigators were trying to understand a serial killer's corkboard. I ate toast while watching experts explain my long-term aerospace strategy. My impulse control was now basically a mall cop trying to stop Godzilla with a whistle. I did not have a long-term aerospace strategy. I had a black card and poor impulse control. One analyst said my purchases showed a sophisticated pattern of vertical integration across hospitality, entertainment, robotics, media, and transport. Cassian nearly fell out of his chair laughing. Mika pointed out that the analyst was not entirely wrong anymore. The hotel fed the hospitality business. The theme park and movie studio supported each other. Beans became media and merchandise. Astra could eventually use Hexalife robotics for station maintenance. Our aviation experience helped with aerospace partnerships. The yacht and train businesses supported luxury travel. Somehow my random purchases had begun forming a network. I said maybe I was a genius by accident. Omar said a broken clock is right twice a day. I told him I could buy a clock company. He apologized immediately. When we returned home, Astra's leadership visited Dollar Plaza for meetings. That was the first time aerospace engineers saw Kevin the dinosaur. One of them took a photograph beside the giant muscular duck. By the end of the day, half the company had changed their internal profile pictures to the duck. Corporate culture was thriving. The serious challenge with Astra was not money anymore. It was time. Space hardware had to be tested. Regulators had to approve operations. Launch providers had schedules. Engineers could not safely accelerate every process just because I could pay faster. That frustrated me at first. I was used to solving problems by finding the vendor and tapping. But some things could not be bought instantly. You could buy better testing equipment. You could hire more qualified teams. You could purchase extra launch capacity. But you could not buy yesterday. So I stopped pushing for speed. Instead, I asked what would make the project better. The engineers wanted a full-scale ground mock-up of the station for training and emergency simulation. Approved. $1. They wanted a neutral buoyancy training facility for crew practice. Approved. $1. They wanted additional life support test chambers. Approved. $1. They wanted 2 years of extra test time before carrying paying guests. That cost no card transaction. It cost patience. Painful. I survived. Meanwhile, Ocean Crown continued construction. The shipyard invited me to review interior designs. This was a mistake. The original plans were elegant. White stone, warm wood, soft lighting, understated luxury. Cassian came with me and immediately asked where the water slide was. There was no water slide. He said every ship needed a water slide. The designer looked offended. I sided with the designer. Then I saw a concept for a retractable glass staircase over the indoor garden and forgot to be responsible. We added it. $1 engineering revision. I added a 2-story library. $1. A hidden cinema behind a moving bookshelf. $1. A recording studio. $1. An indoor climbing wall disguised as a stone sculpture. $1. Cassian requested a karaoke room. I denied it because of what happened on the train. He bribed the interior designer with expensive champagne. I bought the champagne distributor. He called abuse of power. I called supply chain management. The karaoke room still appeared in the final plans. I had lost control of my own yacht. By then, my first yacht impulse purchase had become my favorite place to escape public attention. Captain Bell no longer reacted when strange deliveries arrived. A custom sea scooter shaped like a shark? Fine. An inflatable obstacle course large enough to be visible from aircraft? Fine. A floating movie screen? Fine. One afternoon, I asked if anything surprised him anymore. He said yes. I asked what. He said a quiet week. Fair. We hosted a small vacation for my family and friends. My mother finally relaxed enough to enjoy the yacht. My father spent half the trip talking to the engineers. Emmy discovered the underwater lounge and refused to leave. The card kept making price irrelevant, which was fantastic for shopping and absolute ass for developing a normal personality. Malik drove a jet ski like he had a personal argument with water. Juno asked whether this was the yacht I had bought to test the card. I said yes. She looked around at the 6 decks, helicopter, pool, and submarine. Then she asked whether coffee had not been enough. I told her coffee only proved $3. Science required scale. She said science also required ethics committees. I pointed at Mina. Mina said she was not my ethics committee and deeply resented the implication. That evening, everyone ate dinner on the upper deck while the sun went down over the ocean. For a few minutes, nothing ridiculous happened. No billionaire bidding war. No broken robot. No billion-dollar invoice. No mysterious app. I actually enjoyed the silence. Then Beans rolled out of the salon carrying a birthday cake, even though it was nobody's birthday. He stopped beside the table. His screen displayed a confused face. I have made a questionable decision. The cake slid off his tray and landed directly in Cassian's lap. Cassian had arrived by helicopter that afternoon without telling me. He sat completely still, covered in frosting. Everyone stopped breathing. Then my mother laughed. That gave the rest of us permission. I laughed so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. Cassian wiped frosting from his jacket and looked at Beans. He said, "I'm buying this robot." I told him Beans was not for sale. Cassian looked at me. I looked at him. Then both of us remembered seller consent. The original Beans really was not for sale. He was company property and, emotionally, my stupid metal son. Cassian ordered a custom unit instead. Hexalife charged him $200,000 for a special edition with upgraded serving arms. He paid normal money. I enjoyed every cent of his suffering. My lifestyle had reached the point where watching a billionaire pay retail felt pornographic. I needed help. A month later, the Beans movie passed $1 billion in worldwide revenue. The theme park announced record attendance. The hotel completed renovations. Dollar Plaza reached full occupancy. Sky Garden 1 rose above ground, its first huge steel sections visible along the coast. Astra completed a major life support test successfully. Ocean Crown's hull moved into final outfitting. For the first time, I could see the results of choices that had begun as jokes. They had become actual companies, jobs, projects, places, and products. That was strange. I had started with a cup of coffee because I thought the card was a scam. Now, I could not open a business newspaper without seeing something I owned. I still did not know why the card came to me. Vivian did not know. Sato did not know. The other holders did not know. The cards simply appeared. Some holders used them quietly for comfortable lives. Some built companies. Some collected weird things. One woman apparently bought antique vending machines until she needed 3 warehouses. And then there was me. 2 mega yachts. 1 dinosaur. 1 giant cowboy duck. A dragon roller coaster. A robot movie. A nearly kilometer-tall tower project. A private train. A space hotel company. Looking at that list, I could not defend myself in any court of taste. But I had learned something important. The card's real power was not that expensive things cost me $1. It was that price stopped being the first question. Before, every idea started with, can I afford it? Now the question was, should I do it? That question was much harder. And based on my yacht count, I was still scoring around 60%. Mina said 60 was generous. Omar said 42. Cassian said 100. My mother said she would grade me at the end of the semester. Nobody asked her to do that, but somehow hers was the opinion I feared most. Then came the launch test. Astra had scheduled an unmanned full-scale habitat module to ride on a commercial rocket as part of a systems demonstration. The module would spend several weeks in orbit testing power, temperature control, communications, and autonomous operations before a controlled return package separated. I had somehow turned legal commerce into the emotional equivalent of streaking through a board meeting. Launch services contract, $380 million. Insurance, $90 million. Tracking services, $12 million. Ground operations package, $40 million. 4 card purchases, $4. I attended the launch with the Astra team. Cassian came because of course he did. Mika came because Arata Group was now building a future training hotel near the ground facility. Mina came because she had stopped pretending she could avoid these events. Omar watched from a safe distance holding coffee and financial dignity. The rocket lifted at dawn. For the first time in my life, something I owned was literally going to space. I watched the flame rise until the vehicle disappeared into the sky. Nobody made a joke for almost 30 seconds. Then Cassian asked whether the card would work in orbit. I looked at him. Mika looked at him. Mina looked at him. Omar slowly lowered his coffee. I said we did not know. Cassian smiled. He asked whether the habitat module had a payment terminal. The lead Astra engineer standing beside us said no. Cassian looked genuinely disappointed. I laughed and said there was nothing to buy up there anyway. The engineer hesitated. That was never good. He explained that the future hotel design included onboard retail systems for food upgrades, private communications packages, souvenir orders, and other guest services. Those terminals would technically route through Earth-based merchant processors. Cassian turned toward me slowly. I told him no. He had not even said anything. I said no again. He said we had to test it eventually. I said eventually could mean years. He said he could wait. That worried me more than if he had argued. The unmanned module reached orbit successfully. Astra employees celebrated. I bought dinner for the entire launch team through one catering invoice. $1. That evening, my black app appeared again. I was in my hotel room alone when the screen went dark. Silver 1. Qualified purchases, 1,143. Complex settlements, 4. Account standing, active. Then a new line. Jurisdiction coverage, terrestrial. I stared. Another line appeared underneath. Expansion condition available. My heart started beating faster. I tapped the screen. For the first time, the app responded to touch. A new page opened. There was only one sentence. Complete a qualifying purchase outside terrestrial jurisdiction. I read it 3 times. Then the app vanished. I sat on the edge of the bed holding my phone. That was ridiculous. There was no practical reason to care. I had more purchasing power than I could ever use on Earth. I did not need an expansion. I did not even know what expansion meant. Maybe it was meaningless. Maybe it was another settlement mode. Maybe the system had been designed by a cosmic credit card company run by aliens with quarterly growth targets. markets. If extraterrestrial bankers existed, I was going to be furious if they charged foreign transaction fees. I called Mina. She answered immediately. I told her what the app said. Silence. Then she said one word. No. I told her I had not suggested anything. She said she knew me. I called Omar. He said we were not building a store in space just so I could buy gum. Again, I had not suggested anything. I called Mika. She asked whether territorial jurisdiction in the app had a legal or physical meaning. Finally, a useful question. Then Cassian called me before I could call him. He was staying 2 floors above. I asked how he knew. He said he did not know anything. He just wanted to ask if I was hungry. I told him to come down. 5 minutes later, he entered my room carrying room service fries. I showed him the screenshot. The spreadsheet was beginning to look less like finance and more like evidence seized from a very horny casino ghost. He read it. His eyes widened. Then he slowly placed the fries on the table. I pointed at him. Do not say space store. He closed his mouth. Good. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it. His expression changed. I asked what happened. He said a courier had delivered something to his home while we were at the launch. His assistant had just sent a photograph. He turned the phone toward me. Black envelope. No logo. No return address. My stomach dropped. Cassian zoomed in. On the envelope, printed in silver, were 2 words. Cassian Voss. I stared at him. He stared at me. I told him it could be a copycat. He said maybe. Then his assistant sent another photograph. The envelope had been opened. Inside was a card. Not black like mine. Deep metallic red. Silver edges. Cassian's name engraved on the front. Under it were 4 words. $2. Any purchase. For 10 full seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I started laughing. I could not stop. Cassian looked offended. I laughed harder. After months of mocking him for paying retail, the universe had finally given him a supernatural card, and it charged him twice as much as mine. $2. The cheap bastard had been assigned premium pricing. He said $2 was still basically free. I told him mine was 50% cheaper. He said percentages did not matter at that scale. I said they mattered emotionally. He called me an asshole. I told him to enjoy poverty. Then another message arrived from his assistant. A note had been inside the envelope. Cassian read it aloud. First purchase activates account. That was all. He looked at me. I looked at the room service fries. The fries had already been paid for. He opened the hotel shopping app and found a ridiculous crystal decanter in the gift catalog priced at $4,000. He called his assistant and told him to retrieve the red card, then stopped. The card was thousands of miles away. Cassian looked genuinely wounded. I said he could wait until we flew home tomorrow. He said tomorrow was unacceptable. Then he remembered he owned a private jet too. Within minutes, his staff had arranged for someone to fly the card toward us on one of his company aircraft. I told him this was the stupidest possible use of private aviation. He reminded me I once hired a helicopter to deliver robot programming carts. That had been necessary. He said this was also necessary. It was not, but I knew exactly how he felt. When the card arrived the next afternoon, half our group gathered in the hotel suite to watch the first purchase. Cassian wanted something memorable. Mina suggested coffee. He said absolutely not. I suggested a towel. He told me to die poor. Eventually, he chose the most Cassian object possible. The hotel had a luxury boutique downstairs, selling a custom mechanical watch made only for the property's opening anniversary. Price $320,000. We stood around the payment terminal like idiots witnessing a sacred ritual. Cassian held the red card over the reader. Beep. The terminal paused. Then a silver 2 appeared. Approved. The boutique received full payment. Cassian opened his banking app. $2 charge. His face went blank. I knew that face. I had worn it in the coffee shop months earlier. The exact moment reality became optional. Then his phone screen turned red. A new app appeared. Silver 2. Account class. Paired. I stopped laughing. Cassian looked at me. Paired with what? He asked. My phone buzzed. Black screen. Silver 1. A new message appeared. Paired account detected. Then another line. Cooperative purchases enabled. Then a third. Competitive settlements enabled. Cassian read over my shoulder. His smile returned. I hated that smile. I hated it because I knew exactly what it meant. The card had spent months turning my life into a shopping anime written by a drunk accountant. I knew I had lost perspective when a 9-figure invoice gave me less anxiety than ordering food from a restaurant with no menu photos. Now it had given my most competitive friend his own version and unlocked something called competitive settlements. Nothing good was going to come from that phrase. My phone displayed one final message. Off-world expansion remains available. Cassian's red app displayed the same thing. We both looked toward the window. It was daytime. We could not see any stars. That did not matter. Somewhere above us, Astra's test habitat was orbiting Earth. Somewhere inside a future design folder, there was already a plan for an onboard payment terminal. And standing beside me was a billionaire idiot holding a card that charged him $2 for anything. Cassian asked the question I had been desperately hoping he would not ask. Ren, how much do you think it costs to put a convenience store in space? I looked at Mina. Mina looked at me. Omar quietly began packing his laptop. Mika opened a spreadsheet, and I realized my $1 Megayacht had somehow become the normal part of my life. That was a horrifying thought, because if this was normal now, I had no idea what counted as stupid anymore. I looked down at the black card in my hand. The silver edge caught the light. $1. Any purchase. I had started by testing it on coffee, then a laptop, then a Rolex, then a Lamborghini, then a house, a Megayacht, companies, hotels, theme parks, robots, trains, skyscrapers, and a space hotel developer. And now the card had apparently decided I needed multiplayer. Cassian grinned and opened a search for orbital retail modules. Mina lunged for his phone. He dodged. I started laughing again. Then my black app flashed one last time. A small new icon appeared beneath the silver one. It looked like a shopping cart. Behind it was a crescent moon. I had absolutely no idea what it meant, but I knew one thing. Whatever it was, it probably cost $1.